Hey. Hey. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. So, I was on about an hour ago, and I just did a PSA, and I am now gonna go into it, and I kind of try to talk a little about what's good and bad. I read some definitions, blah 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 blah. But I want to show you a video that I hope will straighten it out, right? What is good and bad, right? So here we go.
Okay.
This is 3 years ago.
So, why do you always find that things are against you? You always are in a combative mode. Things are.
Let's stick to this. I don't want to start in that direction.
Okay.
Let's stick to this because this is my solid experience, and I'm about to.
Solid, but isn't that a subjective point of view?
It's my solid experience.
Your subjective point of view.
You asked me whether you can do that.
So
I think it might be a good idea to do that.
Okay, so
send me a copy, okay?
well, okay.
Yeah. All right. So now, on the positive side, well, first of all, I want you to pay attention to me, not to that thing.
Okay.
And probably the reason I was feeling so lousy yesterday is because I'm in let's say, I have given you a lot of trust. A lot of trust where other people were saying, hey, watch it. And I gave you a lot of trust. I'm in a crisis of tipping that trust. And when I say that, that's a very different thing from John throwing you out every 10 minutes.
But that's not that he doesn't trust me. It's just because of his emotional.
I'm talking about me.
Okay, but you brought up John, and I'm bringing a context.
I'm just saying that
I'm bringing a context to the discussion.
I was feeling so rotten yesterday because of this tipping of trust.
And where is that coming from?
That's what this list is
Well,
about.
then let's hit it.
I want you to concentrate on.
Okay, let's hit it.
Okay, and I want you to read
Okay.
as I'm going along.
Okay.
So that you also establish
Okay.
these lines,
Yep.
all right? So on the positive side, we have certainly a long history, decades now, that we know each other,
Yep.
and that we have appreciated each other more or less
Yep.
for what we are. But what I have experienced now coming back, sort of in the wake of your being there in the gallery and being there in the log cabin, is it's just beyond anything that I could have imagined.
How come?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
And
But you know that like right now, it's pushing 10, and I got to be at this place at 12.
well, we're not going to need much more than about an hour or half an hour on this thing.
I think half an hour is all I can really spare because I mean, we can. This doesn't have to be.
It's a list. We can continue.
Right. Okay. So continue the list.
So I will drop the positive things at the moment and go into the thing that I'm into 3 seconds.
But I would like to bring up a few positive things.
Like what?
Well, because I was always had your back. I was always looking out for what you needed.
And that's exactly what you think you did, but you didn't. And that's one of the reasons.
Why can't you understand?
I will take this one item at a time.
Okay, so let's.
Then we
Okay.
have a solid thing.
Okay.
Okay. So number one, I have had to spend a lot of time cleaning up after.
What is this number one list? The first list was a positive,
This is the positive. We're here right now.
right?
Under things that I'm missing.
Okay, number one.
This is Mishka.
Number one.
This is the son of George and Inga Solanovich, the people who made the school, who made all of the buildings. And I took care of his mother while he was in Germany for about 8 years, right? And every time he'd come to visit, he was so uptight, he would get sick and end up in the hospital. The first time I met this guy, it was in the middle of a hurricane, and I came up the road, and I asked, and go, where's your son, Mishka? He's just supposed to arrive. Well, he's over near Miskala, and he's dealing with the road. And I went over there, and it was a hurricane, and he was right by a culvert, and like a river of water was shooting down this culvert, and was shooting at the other end. The culvert was maybe 2 foot, right, and maybe 36 inches, and it was shooting at the other side like a fire hose. And he was down there, and he was pulling out all of these vines from the where the water was shooting into the thing, right? And I'm standing up there, and I'm screaming at him. He can't hear because it's a tornado and a hurricane, and he's down there pulling up all these vines, and the vines he's pulling up are poison ivy. And he almost got sucked in that thing, and if he went to that culvert, it would have chewed him up like cheese. And I grabbed him. I said, "Come on, this is a hurricane. Who are you?" "I'm Al." "Oh, well, come on. And I took him back to the house and got him in there and got him warmed up. And I said, "You should take a real shower." He goes, "Why?" And I said, "Because what you were pulling up was poison ivy." "No, it wasn't." Anyway, 2 days later, he got the worst case of poison ivy. And a day later, he was in the hospital on IV. Hey, Anthony, what is this video? This is the guy. This is Inga and George Solanovich's son, and he is a guy who is supposed to be a psychologist in Germany.
That's a profound breach because I couldn't lock the thing.
And he's going on about. I kind of kept an eye on his house and this other building that's called the Art Gallery. And I moved a few boxes around, and this is how he lost his mind. And there was a guy in there who was a psychopath, and I got him out. And there was a guy John was, we rented the basement out, and so I got that guy out into his house, and then he stayed there 5 years and then bought the place, and this guy, got a couple $100,000 for it, right? And this is how he's like upset because I lost his whole punch, but then he realized he took it back to Germany.
Cause it to being misplaced, So, yes, I will agree that I move things around, but I was not cognizant of the fact that it was as important, meaning because in my experience, if something is that important to me, I move it out of the space. I take it over here. And I also, if I couldn't do that and had to leave it in that place, I would have a specific conversation about it rather than something, because it didn't stick. Meaning if we had really had the kind of, no, you didn't.
I told you that 3 times.
Well, it didn't stick. We didn't.
Okay, I'll stop it. I'm just saying that was, for me, 3 times was enough, and you promised you would not touch it. You promised it would be okay.
Well, it is okay, right?
No, it's not okay. It took me 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get to it. Right, and for a long time, I thought it's gone completely.
He found it it was a room that was 20 feet by 20 feet, and he left it a total mess, and I cleaned everything out, and still he found all his stuff. I just moved it to the other side of the room. And his kitchen, he left the kitchen a total mess, rotting stuff in the refrigerator because the power went out.
I'm missing a bunch of time that I had to spend because of the mess you left behind.
Okay, so okay, that's number 1. What's number 2? Because we only got a half hour.
I'm still on number 1. A very important part of my time would have been to be able to empty out the gallery before the ditch was far enough. Empty it out.
And he spent $1,000 on trying to get his septic line attached, and I did it. I did it. He didn't do it. He couldn't even find the septic line, and I connected the septic line so he could have a toilet in that place.
I was putting my stuff in the little cabinet.
I said you can have the space below the table.
And the log cabin was this little log cabin that was like a storage room, and it was just jammed full of crap. And I cleaned it all out. And this locker he's talking about, it was a big wooden locker like you could stick a car on top of, and I turned it into a table. And it was there. It was like all you had to do was look at it. It took them 2 weeks to find that the box was there on the floor.
I don't. You snuck it in there. No, I didn't sneak it in there. Okay, that's my position. Okay, that was a major steal of my time.
Okay.
Number two.
What's number two? Number two.
No, I'm not finished with number one yet.
Okay. We only got a half hour here.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, I emphasize at least.
And I had to go to give a deposition
and you were promising
about
you would stay
a
under the
piece
table.
of property downtown that was, belonged to the black artist community, and the city was going to take it from them. And I was the guy who got the data on it to like make sure the city didn't destroy this historical thing. And I told him, he said, "I want to come see you right now." And I said, "I can't. I got to go to give a deposition." And he just came up and forced me to do this.
All of that stuff I would have to find. I didn't come prepared to have a court case.
Well, you come to, what do you mean? You wrote it out as a deposition here?
No, I wrote it out so that you and I can follow a pattern without sliding off the road.
Okay. But we are, we haven't gone past one. So.
Yes, but this one is one of the main things you stole from me a bunch of times.
I stole it.
You took that time by creating a mess that you did, and by filling the.
I am heartfully apologetic.
I doubt that. And then, how much time did I need? I needed about an hour at least to get my boxes free that I wanted to get into on the right side. And I had emphasized and overemphasized and emphasized to you again. Do not put anything on this wooden box, which was on the trek in Germany, and do not put anything
Again,
in front of those steel boxes.
I apologize.
So what is it about you? What's the message to me? The message is I don't give a shit about you, Mishka. And if you give me a hand, I'll take the arm. That's the message.
Okay.
So now
That's what you're feeling.
That's how the message comes to me.
Right. That is your subjective perspective of receiving the message.
Number two. Yeah. I found the American hole punch. So the American hole punch is done.
Okay.
But the German hole punch may be my fault. Maybe by mistake I put it in my in my thing, even though I was a matter of seconds or minutes that I had to get out of there.
Right.
But all the other office stuff I still haven't found.
What's that?
I don't know. There were the little things like the thing you use to get the crimps out of a paper, Scotch tape, a whole bag full of things that were in my drawer. My drawer, the desk drawer was empty, and the other two drawers.
It had couple of knives in it.
Yeah, okay.
Those were there.
That's very nice because one of those knives is the last present from my grandfather to me.
Okay.
But things like that, all the rest was empty. And my office stuff is not there. It disappeared. I don't know where the hell it was.
Well, do you think you might have put it someplace
No.
else, like the German hole?
No. There was no reason. No. I mean, the German hole punch, I apparently took it with me for no reason at all.
This is like a Bechtel Brecht play.
You go to the dollar store and buy you a roll of Scotch tape?
No. My problem is that you took a thing that a lot of it's a dependence. I have a bag full of things that I need to be able.
His real issue is that he had real issues with his parents, and he went back to Germany, and he didn't have any kind of credentials, but he made himself a shrink, but like, a Tony Robbins kind of that, right? And
I'm spending a whole
his
2
mother
months
loved me,
of
and
missing a
I
little
took
thing
care of
here,
her.
missing
And
a little
every
thing
time,
there, missing another
for
thing
about
there.
4 years, he would come,
Well,
and I've been taking care of her, and he felt guilty.
Sense of missing. Number 3.
And he calls himself
I
a
had an entire
psychotherapist,
stack of
and
A4
I'm sitting there being the psychotherapist.
paper of this size, European
Listen
size.
to this one.
It's gone.
Why would I even want that?
Beats the shit out of me, but it's gone. And it's not in the gallery because the gallery, I now know the gallery from floor to ceiling.
Right.
It's not in the gallery. It's gone. It must have somehow, by some unconsciousness of yours or who knows what the hell, you either used it as toilet paper or something else, but it's gone.
Right.
All right? And because it's gone, I didn't have the papers to do to make my notes of the German sessions because I wanted to have them on German paper with German holes in them to put them in the right or loose leaf holder, etc. Nothing. My papers are all floating around all over the place. I don't have a hole punch, and I don't have the papers. They disappeared during your watch.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I don't even remember seeing that paper.
Yes, okay. I almost believe you because there is one aspect of this is I don't think you give a shit. Now I'm beginning to really believe that you don't give a shit. Secondly, you're chronically unable to keep boundaries between you and other people. You slouch over boundaries. And that's another boundary. It's just solid, real boundaries. There was a stack of paper like this.
You don't know me too well, do you?
Holes in it.
I've known this guy, 20 years.
All right.
And
Next
I've
thing.
always had his back.
My breathing filter. I bought a brand new breathing filter in Brambleton Hardware. One of those things with 2 packs here,
Right.
etc., and so on and so on.
Yeah.
I used it in there. I have taken apart all your ceiling stuff
Right.
and done all kinds of things there with the dust coming directly into my lungs.
Okay.
Because I didn't have a breathing filter that I could find in 10 minutes.
Again, I don't even remember seeing one there.
Well, I'm
So
sorry
that
about
which goes to the point that this stuff may not have ever been there. That you may have because when you pack up,
That's
whenever
how
you do
No, sir.
anything,
No.
you are. I mean, I have images of you packing just before you go.
Don't waste your time. I have a very limited amount of stuff that I can put in that thing. It's got to be 23 kilos, and if it's over that, I pay extra.
Right.
I had that thing full, and I unpacked it all in Germany.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you may have put it some
No,
other
I did not put. I had everything in the gallery.
Okay. But that's one thing I don't remember. I mean, I remember seeing that hole punch, but I don't remember seeing because I would have worn it putting that shit up there, but I didn't. I wore a little paper thing. I'm going to go get my breakfast.
So, our little discussion is about good and bad, right? And that right there really shows subjectivity about what somebody thinks is terrible. Now, this is a guy I've known for 20 years. I've saved his life a number of times. Like I said, I pulled him out of this culvert that he would have been sliced up like cheese. And I dragged him back to his mother. And he came from Germany about 5 times to see her. Not every year, but and he had issues with his parents, and so does his sister. And their parents were like the original hippies, right? And world famous artists, and they were stuck in Europe, and they were always one step ahead of the Nazis and one step. I mean, this guy was born in a roadside ditch, and a Nazi doctor was delivering him while a U.S. P-47 was strafing them because they were in a kill zone, and she's naked, got her legs up in the air. The Nazi is trying to pull Mishka out while big, P-47 had a cannon in it, and the shells were this big, right? And when they hit something, they blew up. They were for anti-personnel. So this airplane's diving out, and that's how he was born, right? So you wonder why he's a little, and he's like meticulous about all the things that don't matter. You know, I mean, I lose the Scotch tape all the time. So I go to the dollar store, buy a few more rolls, get some, and everything is meticulous. And you should, the really amazing thing is that I found this video, and how I found this video was that Jamie Hilliard found it and put it on, the comments and said, "This is a freaking amazing," right? And so I had to go look. I have a shitload of it. I didn't realize how many freaking videos I have. And it was just mind-boggling how many videos I had. And here's where's some more good ones. Let's see. Library. Here we go. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. Let's see. Columbus, first things first. Woodstock, Indigenous, others. Let's see. Welcome to Bubble Land. That's a good one. Be the change you want to see. Okay, here's a good one.
It was when all these young kids who went to college, the collapse happened, they couldn't get a job, so they went back to mommy and daddy's house to live in the basement, and they hung out in this place.
And this was a place, my friend, this is in Stewart. I live in this town. This old guy is a brain surgeon from Chile. And Allende tried to kill him because he was not just a brain surgeon, he tried to, have a democracy in Chile. The CIA came after him. So right behind him is his hospital where he worked. He came here and he did his surgery in that hospital behind him. This is Stewart, Florida. And right across the street was these houses, and my friend William bought one and put his legal office in the back. And in the front, he put a French cafe called the Blue Door.
We're on a whaling ship, sharpening the harpoons for the great white one.
And so all these kids and all these other people, this is another town I kind of came in when it was like in its low point in 2008. Everyone was, right? And all these kids became millionaires because they hung out in their screen door and made the next great app, right? Let's move along. Let's see. So this is the place that Mishka was talking about. He left it full of crap. I cleaned everything up, put him over in one corner, and then moved in there, right? And I was living comfortably. And it's in winter. They had no heat, right? No, nothing. And here's pictures and other videos. This is us at night.
I am Grandpa Smurf, so. Wow, Mr. Mushroom. A little elf warrior. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Black paper, I like that. Yeah, this is actually my favorite. Charcoal. Charcoal paper, yes.
And this is what it looked.
We would go there and sit, have coffee, and play music, and talk, and just have a generally good old time. Kind of what they had in Paris in the 1890s.
I mean, there were instruments on the walls. People would just pick them up and
William had all these instruments just on the wall. And an amp and a mic. And you can just pick it up and sing. These three guys were software developers. They were building apps. And a guy with a red hat, he had made some cash doing apps, but you wouldn't think it looking at these guys. And this was the cross-star lover couple, and she was the manager of the coffee house, and our boy there, he had been SEAL in Iraq, and he became a political, what do you call those guys who organize political
Campaigns.
He got the mayor, and he was really well connected, and he and I would do things in the city culturally, and this was the crew. We were all in love. I had my little sweeties.
And those ladies were from New York. So all these guys were in their 20s, and I was, 65. Or maybe 63. Or maybe just 60. Somewhere in there. And so that's the desk. I mean, that was the place that Michigan was all upset that I messed up. And I put electricity in there and lit it up.
A friend of mine who was a pretty amazing artist, he would just take junk and make stuff. And this is his backyard. And the ocean was just right there, meaning a couple blocks from where we were. And this is my friend John's, not Johnny John, but John from Massachusetts, from Boston. He was a Southie, and he had been living. He bought this house in Port St. Lucie for nothing, and he'd been there for 20 years. And he really turned it into a Garden of Eden, that's for sure. Because outside of it, this is his backyard, and out in the front was the hood. But in Florida, anything grows is pretty friggin' amazing. And we were just, 2 miles to the ocean from his house. I spent a winter at his house. He was a generous guy.
And I could have been there this winter.
Oh, here's my sweetie, Tiff. She ran a tiki bar in Miami. And for some reason, she thought I was fun, sexy. This is another bar, and this is, I think, Hollywood. Yeah, she was wanted to be a shaman. He thought he was a shaman. Nice tip. Here are the girls. They worked for the Desperate Lawyers, and they were loads of fun. They just wanted to have a good time. And yes, this guy was just a little strung out. He was the drummer of the band. These girls were just so much fun.
I worked with those girls.
And
They were
even
lawyers.
drunk. So this is the difference between that other group at the Blue Door and this at the Sandbox. Everyone was just a little angst. And this was an idea of a club at, it was a great thing. It was like on the strip, and the guy put about 20 tons of sand in his parking lot and turned it into a place where people could hang out. But not many people hung out, except the girls from the Desperate Lawyers, and they were fun. Here the girls
So I was working as, consultant for the Desperate Lawyers.
Going through the motions.
And this band, this was my friend SPH. And he was a guy who was always just out of step. When he went to college in Miami, and he could play the guitar. So these girls I worked with, right? When I negotiated, this was my team, and they worked for the most uptight guys, and I loosened everyone up. And this Sandbox place, the guy was a buddy of one of the lawyers, and he heard that I made disco, so I just kind of helped pull it together. So that's Mr. SPH. And he was just uptight about everything. He thought everyone was out to get him. And
good time, angst. Good time, angst. Good time.
Now these girls are lawyers, And so his band were all guys from jail and, strung out on drugs, And where the girls, they did no drugs at all. And it was just me. I used to be there. The first time I worked for that office, I was like, before I met Tiff, I was like their roommate. And they just loved my ass. And we just had a great old time. We had so much fun, tormenting the, there she is.
Yes, my sweetie. Ricky.
It's not Tiff. I live with her. Tiff was...
But she was working a little TV station down there in South Florida. And she went up to Orlando, and now, she's moving up the line. But she was the most sweetest, kindest, smartest. I met her at the Blue Door. She was sitting at her laptop writing her story. And I had a bunch of books, and she said, "What are you reading?" And we started talking about French Impressionism and existentialism and religion, and she was just the best. Well, she didn't care I was an old guy. We were just sweet on each other.
This is in a town with Jensen Beach we lived
Waking up
in.
to breakfast. She always had a book in her hand. And a camera. I was showing her how to shoot. Yeah, she's getting pretty close there.
So that's like a TV camera, right? Super duper digital whoop-de-doo Canon thing. And she never picked up a camera. And I told her I was a newspaper photographer back in the day.
Misused
So I taught her.
and abused animals. There they are.
These are the girls I
This
knew
lady,
in New York.
She was somebody I knew from New York who was a disco queen. And Ricky, she could just light anybody up. This woman, she wasn't doing too good. And
She was
Ricky
dying of cancer.
just smile.
And I brought her a wig and took her out clubbing.
This girl had what can I say? Disco for 20 years, that'll do it to you. She was one of the disco girls. Here's me when I was big, really big. I was pushing 500 pounds in that picture. It was like, I'm like a third of the guy I was in that picture. There's Ricky. There's Homie, my boy Homie.
My doggy,
And his
my boy
mom,
dog.
Bella. And there's Ricky with William. William, there's my buddy, the lawyer, who started the Blue Door. And this is another place on the other side of Stewart. This is kind of almost near Jensen Beach. I said anything grows in Florida. And this was, these guys, she worked at Hewlett Packard. She was one of their high flying engineers, and he was a investment banker. And he's pretty old. He was 80-ish, and she was 50-ish, 60-ish. They were sweet couple. They were kind of, they had both.
Bum, 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 bum. Hey, honey bun. So what's shaking? Bacon? So, audience, we're switching 90 degrees from, we were waiting for this guy to call. Well, the lights go on. And so, Sean, we are talking about good and evil.
Oh, I know all about that shit.
So give us some wise words, oh one.
Well, I don't think I'm here. My contribution probably isn't going to help very much.
Oh, come on. All your contributions do.
Well, see, because I'm pissed off sometimes.
Well, that's not bad. Pissing off is, I just did a video of a guy who was really pissed off, and one of the cadre said, that guy looks like he wants to kill Al. So you're very synchronistic, because there was this video when this guy, total anal retentive, and everything he was like going on about didn't matter. It didn't matter that I knew him for 20 years. Didn't matter that I saved his life. Didn't matter that I saved his, what little money he had. Didn't matter that I took care of his mom for 10 years, when he was in Germany, right? Didn't matter any of that. What mattered was that I misplaced his Scotch tape and his hole punch.
Put it in perspective, dude.
Yes, that's what I kept saying. This is your subjective point of view. And he's supposed to be a psychologist, and he was losing his mind.
Jeez.
Yes.
Wow, some people, I tell you. Holy crap. Hey, I'm driving. I'm going to pick up a friend. He wants to meet with me, but I'm going to take my time and talk to you.
Okay.
So anyway, maybe I have the wrong approach, but here it goes.
Okay.
Does God always get what he wants?
And now that's a good title for the next show. Does God always get what he wants? John goes on and on about God and Jesus. Praise Jesus. And he always puts it in a transactional thing. I'm doing God's will, so I'm going to heaven. It's like, and I'm talking about sex and this, and we were talking about masturbation last night, and he ran away because, oh no, God wouldn't want me to hear about it, but he does it all the time. So it's like, come on, God is very understanding. He made us the way we are. He knows we want to jerk off all the time. He wouldn't put that little scratch in our head. Now I'm thinking about, my brain is somewhere else, and the only time sex comes around me is when some girl kind of taps me on the shoulder and goes, "You're cute." That's when I can say, "Yeah, I got this itch over here. You want to scratch it?" But other than that, I'm not thinking about it. Yeah, I jerk off, but only after I have a dream about a girl tapping me on the shoulder, going, "Hey, you're cute." So it's all in perspective. God doesn't give a fuck really what we do. Otherwise, he would be a micromanager.
Or as Garrett Morris called it, God with friction. Anyway. A little bit of trivia for you there.
Yeah.
But, speaking of, God gave us all the ingredients, and it's up to us to bake the cake. And, what if God is the biggest deadbeat dad in the universe?
No shit. That's what Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was about. That's the point she was making. Here's Dr. Frankenstein playing God, and they never call him the monster in the book. They call him the creature. And Frankenstein shows him off and then kicks him out of the house and says, "I don't want to see you again." So
Yeah.
that's exactly what Mary Shelley was saying, that God is a deadbeat parent.
Well, it's like, okay, I made the world in 6 days and 7 day rested. It's like, okay, kids, well, you're on your own. Bye. Have fun.
Have fun. And I won't do shit about it. You guys get into trouble, fuck you. You know, I'll be at the track, you know?
Well, I gave you a brain with the capacity for you guys to figure out how to split the uranium atom.
Right.
So, what could possibly go wrong?
Yep.
So in other words, he knew that we cannot resist the temptation to completely and utterly, totally fuck up.
Right. And, he knew, he made everything. God made everything. So that meant, and he made the devil. He was the number one boy, right? And so he knew this shit was going to happen. The devil would freak out and want to, being, Daddy doesn't love me no more. So I'm going to fuck everything up. Sin, 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 right? And God made us to be real tempted by sin,
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna quote George Carlin. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
These are the kinds of thoughts that kept me out of the really good schools.
Yes. Oh, but concurrently, these were the kind of thoughts that really good schools wanted me to be there and think about them, but pretend I didn't exist.
Yeah. Oh, that old game.
Yeah, that old game. At least they paid me. I have to say they at least paid me.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I haven't reached a point where I've reconciled anything, I guess.
Well, that's good. You're still on the hunt.
All right. Well, we're still on square one.
You're still on square one. Yep. At the beginning. But see, there is no finish line, buddy.
Wow, there's a concept.
Yep.
There is no finish line. Damn it.
What?
No, I was going to make a joke about, having illegitimate children all over the globe,
Right.
pulling out in time and the finish line.
Right.
Hey, what have I done here?
I don't know.
I don't know. There is no finish line. Well, if you're on the North Pole you start walking any direction and it's south.
Right. Yes, if you're at the North Pole. Yep.
I don't know. Hey, I wanted to say something. We had a conversation earlier today. I do still burn pallets. That's how I heat my house.
Right.
I'm recycling.
Are they? Do they still make them out of oak? Because when I burnt pallets, they were pretty much all oak.
Some of them are oak. Yes, some of them are oak. And when they get going, man, that burns really hot.
Right. Oh, no shit. Nice.
Some of it seems to be some weird, like South American, almost like balsa wood or
Right.
something.
Well, they also make pallets out of this recycled cardboard and sawdust that they get from, making plywood, and they squeeze it together, add glue, and they aren't like the pallets that are made out of wood that you can keep using, but they're very good for one-time use. Stack a whole bunch of shit, drive it into a container, leave it there. When the container shows up, the forklift can pick it up and move it over to the shelf, and that's about as good as it can get. Which
there's some toxic, nasty.
Yeah, so those things you don't want to burn those things. They kill you. Burning oak, though, in that big fireplace up in the South Bronx, I was telling our friend here that the first place when I said fuck off to my parents at 14, and I was living the rest of that summer in New York City, I just took the 7 train up to the South Bronx, and there were hundreds of blocks in any direction all of these buildings were built between the 1880s and 1910 for the rich people, because it was up the hill, and it had a nice, before air conditioning, had a nice, air, nice breeze, and everything was like mahogany and marble. And then in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it all collapsed, and then poor people moved in there, and then that collapsed in the oil embargo, and so it was just gangs and shooting dens. Right, there was no businesses, so everything got redlined, and but there were certain parts of the South Bronx nobody was. Period, nobody. Right, and the first place I took over one building that was a beautiful brownstone, and like I said, marble and mahogany everywhere. And once I broke in the back through the basement, went up, it was like it still had furniture in it, and nice stuff. And I went down in the basement, hot wired the juice, it all lit up. And then I kind of thought, better, every house in 60 block radius is not lit up, better not to light things up. So I had outlets and task lighting, but I didn't light it up like bingo. But I had that summer, and I turned a friend of mine onto it, and it turned it over to them. And then went back to prep school, and then again, next time I found another. I moved into the federal courthouse in the South Bronx, which was it was like a castle. Had its own subway stop. You had to get off at 76th Street and walk up 20 blocks in the little tunnel along the subway. But the subway that was station that was for that court building, because they closed the building, they closed that. But you walked a little platform along. You just got up at, well, it was 125th Street. Got up 125th Street and walk up about 20, 30 blocks, and bingo, you were at that place. And it had one of those revolving doors, and the fucker, all I did was push, and it went right. I went right in the building. They didn't even lock it, and it had had everything in it. And all they did was cinder block up the windows and doors on the ground floor and the second floor. And I went in there and I didn't have to hot wire anything. I just threw the switch. All the electricity went on. I walked in the elevator, pushed the button, whoop. So it was pretty frigging amazing. So that was one heck of an unbelievable place to have a party.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we had some kick-ass parties there. And it wasn't that far away from, they made a movie, New Jack City, about the cocaine guys up there, and those guys were. I mean, New Jack City really was exactly what that movie was, and so they were like, I don't know, 10, 15 blocks from me, and they found out I was there, and the OGs came in, and I said, guys, this is a courthouse, right? Let this be, the neutral spot, right? And you get in through the subway, but there are other tunnels, so why don't we, and the mole people live. Did you ever read The Invisible Man by Ellison?
I've only seen the old black and white movie.
Yes. No, The Invisible Man. No. That was H.G. Wells. Ellison, Invisible Man was about black people in the late 50s up to the early 70s, 60s, 50s, 60s, where they had this, Harlem was just humming as an economic machine. And then after World War II, and everybody was invisible.
Oh, wow.
And so he goes from his childhood in the 40s and then the 50s when he's trying to do something and become a writer, and all his buddies, were either blown up in the war or became heroin addicts or landed up in jail. And he explains that whole what happened to the black people. That one book is it. So, and a good portion, about 600,000 New Yorkers became mole people, because there's so many levels of tunnels in New York City that it's mind-boggling, right? And so from you go past the little stop where the courthouse was, and you kept on that thing, and there were these doors that were went into like, Con Ed lockers and tunnels for power and water and septic and other subway things and other buildings that were like from the 1600s. I mean, it was unbelievable what's underneath New York City and Chicago and St. Louis and other places like that matter. And so the Mole people, they started to grab it. They saw that I was there, so they kind of grab it up and I had to have like, I negotiated with the Mole people not to just crawl over me and take over the place, but that I would help them restructure their mole world. And so in about 3 years, yeah. So I was like the diplomat. That's why I learned about how to be a negotiator. And years later, I used it with the desperate lawyers in the corporate world. My experience with the Mole people and the OGs, right? And because they kind of had once they kind of realized that they could work together, there was a synchronicity that they kind of fit pretty well together, and it kind of got rid of a lot of violence and the edge. But what happened was, as the 60s ran into the 70s, people don't know how bad the 70s were. Where were you in the 70s?
I was in Colorado.
So you grew up in Colorado. So like New York City went bankrupt in the 70s.
Well, I remember that. Was it Mayor Koch, right?
Koch, and there were three, because it lasted about 12 years, right? So
They got bailed out by the federal government.
not
right?
really. I mean, bailed out to the point where they no, because they fired half. They used to have 40,000 police, and they went down to 15,000.
Wow.
And the crime went off the hook, not because people were committing crime. The fucking cops were the ones killing, shooting, selling drugs, because they knew, in New York, it was either the criminals or the cops, and they were all crime. They were all criminals. They were all, antisocial. And like the New York City was so bankrupt, all of the parks, they didn't mow the lawn.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Wow.
And down in the Battery at the tip of Manhattan, there's a park. It's called the Battery Park. And, it's a small park. It's like faces towards, Pearl Street, West Street, and I forget, North Street. And it was like where the Dutch everything was, right? And so that kind of fell apart. And so they turned it into a park, like in the, 1890s. And they had little grass areas. And you can tell how many wards we had, because these little grass areas had marble totems to the people who died. I mean, most people don't know how the number of wars we had, from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War, were a bunch, with the Indians and these guys and those guys, and all these markers were in these little grassy things, and they had in New York City, when you walk around, you will see all the parks and everything have wrought iron fences, right? These kind of spears that go up 6 feet and have super duper points on the top. And they did that because the Irish rebelled about being drafted. They get off the boat, handed a uniform and a gun, and marched off to die in the Civil War. And if you ever see the movie Gangs of New York, it ends with the Irish Rebellion, and then you see all this explosion, and you can construe that the gangs were blowing each other up. But no, I mean, they didn't have guns. They had like knives. But the guys who were being drafted, the Northern government was so stupid. They got off the boat, they handed them a uniform and a pack and a gun with a bayonet, and in the pack there were bullets. So once they kept dying, they told the other guys who were heading over on the boat, don't do this. And so they were giving guns and uniforms and, packs with bullets and stuff. And so they had a rebellion. And New York City didn't have any bridges in those days. So every street, like you go from the east side of, the west side of New York to Brooklyn, and there are East Side to Brooklyn, and instead of bridges or tunnels, they had ferries, hundreds of them. And so, like, Grand Street stops at the river, and then in Brooklyn, it starts again, and there was a ferry between it. So they stopped all those ferries, so those people who were shooting everybody couldn't get off. And they brought in the army, and because the Irish guys had guns, and so what, they pulled the army out, and the U.S. Navy shelled Manhattan and killed 250,000 people in one night.
What year was this?
During the Civil War.
Holy crap.
And it's not really in the history books. If you read Howard Zinn's book, he goes it in great detail. But it's not in your high school history book, no. That one, more Northerners were killed by the Northern Navy than any battle in the Civil War. The people who were paying their taxes to be protected by their government were murdered and they just didn't kill the Irish. They just, had the big boats out there with the big guns and shelled all of Manhattan from the Battery all the way up to the Bronx. So they killed all the rich people who lived on Fifth Avenue,
Good God.
Yeah, that's kind of how they did it. So people today, you should study that just so you have a clue what the fuck these motherfuckers are going to do to you.
Oh, man.
Then you look at what we did to the indigenous people here. We killed 600 million of them. Yes, it took 400 years to kill 600 million people, but we did it. 600 fucking million. So that's the story about good and bad. Like you see history, and they basically say that it was good. The Indians were terrible people, so we killed them. They don't say 600 million of them, but, in all the movies,
Yeah.
So what is good and bad,
That's something today that makes me wonder about one thing.
What?
Did you know Robin Williams?
No, that's one guy I did not meet.
Okay. Well, all right, because you made an interesting comment today, so...
What did I say? What did I say?
Well, we were talking about hands.
Oh, yeah, and your hairy arm. Yes.
Oh, that's why you said that.
Yes.
Okay.
Your hairy arm. I said you're related to, yes. So I never met him, but I saw him in clubs, and I knew the club people. I mean, we didn't, a lot of people I met like that, I got to know. Because he was so on, even when he came off stage, he was on stage. I mean, he had so much cocaine in him that it was amazing. So it was amazing that he lived long enough to then have to commit suicide. So I sent you some links to him, didn't I? Of Robin Williams being on that Late Show.
Not me. I don't think so.
Oh, well, I somebody sent me that link, and it's hilarious. And it's with a guy's name. He's Scottish, Craig something or other. You know who I'm talking about? What?
Ferguson.
Craig Ferguson. Is he still doing that show?
I don't follow that, so I'm not sure.
Anyway, he is a funny guy, and he was or is still, but Robin's dead. But somebody sent me this link, and it was about 5 shows that were within 2 or 3 years to the day he died. And so you see Robin, and he was happy. He married a new wife. He had family, he had friends. The question is, why did he commit suicide, to my mind? So, I observed a lot of famous people allegedly commit suicide. Prince, Michael Jackson, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Marilyn Monroe, and a whole bunch more, right? Oh, John Lennon. But John Lennon was assassinated. He didn't commit suicide. But I would say that all of those people were murdered.
wondered about Jimmy. He did not commit suicide.
No.
That guy did not.
No.
And I wonder about Robin Williams. Why would
Yeah.
I can't see that happening.
Especially if you see this link. I'll send it to you. But it's hilarious because all these guys do is riff, right? For the whole show. There were 4 shows, and, the show's an hour and a half. And those talk shows have degenerated back when it was Jack Parr who first started it, and then a few other people, the guy who interviewed, people and was like kind of intellectual on ABC. They were talk. They talked about things, interesting things. And now all they do is talk about their sneakers and this for 5 seconds. And then they move somebody else in and they talk to them. And, never, ever does anybody make a comment that really matters. Not like here on Dreamy Dreamland, we talk about stuff that matters. Right, Cadre? Well, there's 4 of you watching. Hey, how about some more thumbs up and good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Bob, your griot telling you stories, and our guest hero. What are we calling you tonight?
Pork chop.
Pork Chop. Our guest tonight is Pork Chop, and he was a good friend of Meatloaf. Both great musicians, right? And both very much comfort foods. Did you ever see Meatloaf?
We go way back in the meat locker.
Were you a fan of Meatloaf?
Not particularly. I mean, I respect his thing. He had a thing, baby.
He did.
It wasn't anything that I.
It wasn't your thing.
Well, it wasn't necessarily my thing, but I mean, definitely he was good and maybe even great.
Well, what I loved about that guy, he was operatic.
Yeah.
And he took opera into rhythm and blues in the way that no one ever did. I mean, there were a lot of great people in R&B that had great chops, but they weren't singing opera, And his songs were operatic too.
He was great in that movie Fight Club.
Yo, was he ever? I love that. That was real. And he lived another 20 years. You'd think that boy is going to keel over any second. But he lived another 20, 30 years, maybe 40 years. When was Fight Luck? Before 2000?
It was right around then.
Right. So,
99.
and he just died a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So, he lived at least 20 more years. There was a nightclub, and I forget it, and it was kind of a really interesting. It had a very nice restaurant and a really great bar that went into a performance space. And it was like on 20-something street. And unless you knew it was there, if you went down the street, it had a nice awning and they had a nice front and it said what it was, but it wasn't like you knew what it was. Oh, that's just a restaurant. Because you went in, there was a bar, there's a restaurant, and then there was this glass mirrored kind of wall, and then there was another bar, really long and big, and it kind of spread out into the where the stage was. And I was their electrician because old building and things always broke, and I was Mr. Fix-It, and I was in there. And these guys show up in a bus, like not a gigantic bus, but like a VW, but a bigger, like an RV, but a bus. One of those things that, like at the airport, something like that.
Yeah.
Like a van. But it was, but they tricked it out. But it was like one of those kind of things that they tricked out themselves into like an RV, right? So they pull up, and the guy, I said, hey, he goes, why don't you go, I don't have any time to even talk to these people because he was more the chef in the restaurant. But he said, you go, you know what's going on. Go get them, bring them in, show them where the green room is, set them up, da-da-da-da. So we did that and went in there. And the lady who ran the bar, she was there. And I said, set them up because these guys came in and they looked like they wanted to drink, right? So set them up. So they set them up. and we drank a few, and they had a cheeseburger or two because they weren't really serving dinner yet. It was still early in the afternoon, like 1 or 2 o'clock. And I had finished my shit, and their manager and this guy from A&R, or some record guy who wanted to, we're going to sign him. That was one reason they were there, to get signed to a big record label. Anyway, so he showed up in a gigantic limousine, and we're drinking at the bar and smoking, and that was the nice thing about this. The back bar, I mean, this is in the 60s, 70s ish, and you could smoke back there, and you could smoke anything back there. And so we're drinking and smoking and just getting along great. And so the record guy said, "Oh, let's go out to dinner," even though we're in a restaurant. And I went back to talk to the restaurant guy. I said, "So do you have any food other than the cheeseburgers?" He says, "No, I won't be ready for at least 3 or 4 hours." I said, "Well, we're going to go, and I'm going to show them places to have dinner." He says, "Well, you just get them back here by 7:30. It was like 2:30. I said, "No problem." So the record guy, he was an LA guy. This manager guy, he was from wherever they were, and we're in the record guy's limo. So he has no idea where anything is. And I say, "So, where are you staying?" He goes, "Oh, at the, Saddler Hilton or whatever." Not like, the big old hotel, but the biggest, nicest, newer hotel in New York. So I said, "Fine, I said, the driver was a New York guy. I said, "So let's go down to Chinatown to da-da-da." He goes, "Okay." So we drove down to the inner part of Chinatown where the Chinese people are, not the tourists. And we got out, and they're looking around. It's like they're in Beijing, They don't see anything in English. Everything's in Chinese. And there's this restaurant. All the really good restaurants were underground. They weren't like on street level. That's where they had stores selling shit like watches and stuff. But the restaurants, you went down into the sub-basement, and there were some really good dim sum. You ever have dim sum?
Oh, yeah.
Right? All those little steam trays and shrimps and buns and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we went in there, and that's a restaurant. I used to date a Chinese lady girl, the daughter of Herbert Wong, and it was Wong and Hung Electric. And the Chinese own a shitload of stuff up in the South Bronx, and I don't understand. The Chinese get along with anyone Caribbean or Hispanic like they're brothers. But black people, it's like razor blades or out, And so he could never fix any of those buildings because the black folk would, he'd drive up in one of his trucks that, had all the Chinese writing on it, and they'd, steal the truck. So he had an unmarked truck, and I used to drive up there. So so I did a lot of work in Chinatown. And so all the Chinese folk, especially the grandmas, love my ass because they'd be working in their restaurant, and I just drop everything and fix shit for them. And so we went into this one shop, Madame Sen's, and had no name. I just called it Madame Sen because her Chinese name sounded like that, but I could never pronounce it. And so we went in there, and I said, "Hey, these guys," and she goes, "Come into the dining room, not the place where the working class and the general public go, but back where the OGs are, the Chinese OGs, the guys in the tongs and the hongs." And we went back, and nobody was there. And she put out a spread like, duck and you name it. She just kept bringing out stuff, starting with dim sum, and just kept coming. And so we finished that, and it was like maybe 4 o'clock. So we still had another 3 hours to burn. So we went into Little Italy and went to Luna's and that guy Meatloaf, he devoured everything. And then when we went to Little Italy, he devoured a whole nother dinner. And we were and those other guys could kind of keep up with him, but this guy just was, and he was like in seventh heaven. He just kept saying, "This is the best. You're the best. You're the best." And so we hit that place. Then we went to a coffee shop, and then a bar. We went to my godfather, Finelli's, Mike Finelli's, and he said, this guy's a 80-something-year-old, number one OG, mafiosa guy. He was like the diplomat of the mafiosa, and he loved opera and he loved Meatloaf. And so when we went in his bar, he went in the back because he didn't have he wanted to listen to music he wanted. And he, put on Meatloaf's, album, his first one that these guys had just done. And they couldn't believe that he had a copy of their record, the kind of ones they send to the radio stations before they hit the stores. He had a copy of that and he played it. And he said, I love you guys. So it was truly amazing. So actually, Mike, who never leaves his place ever, got in the limousine and we went up to that place and they did a show, which was a kick-ass show. And then what did we do? I think we just slept in that nightclub in the green room. And then in the morning, I took them to the Waldorf Astoria, to the Oak Room for Eggs Benedict and champagne.
Oh, nice.
And then they left. And I saw them two more times. So
you were Dick Cavett, is who you're trying
yes,
to think
Dick Cavett, that's the guy. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I remember him. He's still alive, I think.
He could be.
I think he is.
Yeah.
And then let's see, Johnny Carson.
Johnny was he was the guy because the guy who started that whole trend was the guy I mentioned, and I forgot his name now. Jack Parr was the first guy he invented that thing in the 50s and 60s, and he did a great show. And I would say David Letterman was the closest to Dick Parr, and the guy that you just mentioned, that I forgot his name already, he was very cerebral.
Oh yeah,
Cavett. And I liked his show. He did a great job. But he Dick Parr had this style of it, and then Cavett had the cerebral star, and then you had Johnny Carson, who is basically the New Yorker who went to Hollywood, right? So, and he was a performer himself. So he did skits. He just didn't have people. He didn't just sit behind the desk. And those skits were pretty hilarious. I liked his skits. And so those three guys had their own flavor of it. And then all the people who came after them just kind of did, Kimmel is kind of all those other guys. The other guy, the Scottish guy, I really like him. And David, I really liked. David was, again, a guy who had his own thing, right? So
really disappointed because one of the great, you can tell the guy's got a great mind. I'm talking about Stephen Colbert.
Yeah. Well, he sold out. I mean, he's a great. I mean, when he did the Colbert Report, is that what it was called? What did that show where he was with truthfully? I mean, he was ahead of everything, right? I mean, he was.
Yeah, he was lightning fast wit. He was started out with Jon Stewart.
Right.
He did Did you see the roast he did of George Bush?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes.
And now he's Mr. Propaganda.
They bought him out. For $45 million.
What happens to your soul, man? I don't get it. I mean, what a waste.
Well, yep. Well, look at that girl on MSNBC, the one with glasses. What's her name?
I don't know.
Well, she gets $35,000 a show. She goes on every evening. I forget her name, but she goes on $35,000 a show, and that's chump change.
You're not talking about Rachel Maddow.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Huh?
That's who I'm talking about, Rachel Maddow.
God, this is when you see people like that, it's like this is what it's like. This is what happens when you sell your soul.
Right, right.
Have one.
I mean, I'm ready to take the money. Come on, don't get me wrong. If Amazon wants to put my TV show with John and the Korean boys and girls, I'm all for it. But what they are buying is Sensei Al Bob, not a shill.
Yeah.
So they would get me and everything I do and everything we are, and it would be good for them because I keep saying this, guys. I am not, I don't believe in anything, and politics is one big bag. It's like a colostomy bag. That's what politics is, right? And it's going to. You can only, push a colostomy bag as a taste treat to the general public for only so long. At a certain point, they will go, "What is this shit?" And then when they have it analyzed, that's what they've been eating and drinking for the last 300 years. So that you can only fool some of the people some of the time. Not, Anyway, so what these morons should be in the what I call Mr. Globaloni, the globalist. I call him Globaloni, like globalist and baloney put together, Globaloni. And I can't take credit for that. Catherine Austin Fitts, you should go. She's got her own blog. I think it's called, what's it called? But she's got her own website and her own blog, and she is great. She appears on Dark Journalism a good deal, along with Joseph P. Farrell. And that somebody tried to knock that guy off. He mysteriously ended up in a hospital without, who knows. And he's gotten out. He's been very low key since he got out. But his books, woo! And David, do you know that guy, Joseph P. Farrell?
Yes, and I know Catherine Austin. Her thing is called the Solari Report.
That's it. Excellent. And she's got the kudos for it. She was second in command of HUD during the Reagan administration. So she saw she goes, "What are you guys doing?" No. If we do this other thing by just taking the money we have and reinvesting in this, we'll make a ton more money. And they said, "Shut up, Catherine. Here's your cut. Go back to your office." And she wouldn't shut up. So they, fucked her big, like made all kinds of lies about her, blackmailed her, but she had nothing to be blackmailed. They made it up. They took her to court and she won. It cost her like $6 million, but she freaking won. And they had to apologize, but no newspaper or any, news, anything would report on it.
Well, she's a good wake-up call for people. She's very factual and very well researched. I mean,
professional beyond belief.
Her research is stuff that you can take to the defunct bank.
The defunct bank, yes, exactly. And Joseph P. Farrell's stuff is, he's a real historian, a real scholar, right? But he smokes too many cigarettes. Just too many.
Poor guy.
Yes, it was like I was at a concert, and people say, "Can't smoke in here." I said, "Fuck you." He was what was known as a chain smoker, put one in and light it with the last ember of the last one and just keep doing that. It was like, I said, "Why are you doing that?" He goes, "I like the way it tastes." That's really?
All right.
Can you even taste anything? But I mean, he had a great. I shouldn't put it in the past tense. He has a great sense of humor. He is hilarious. I mean, Catherine has a great sense of, and the other guy, big guy. We were both the two big guys, and he was the guy about admiralty law. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Wait. I think Maxwell.
Yes, Jordan Maxwell. There's another one. His stuff is his historical. He is the mixture of Joseph P. Farrell and Catherine Austin Fitts. You put them together, you get that guy, because he's really a historian, and he really puts it into context for the last 1,400 years. Really. So those.
Fascinating.
Yep.
He's still with us.
Yep. So. But he is really. Those guys are truly, and they've written a ton of books, so you just read what they, and there are a ton of, YouTubes and a ton of blogs. I mean, they, and I was, so James Hilliard there, he sent me this link to that thing, Mishka, and he was like, "This is everyone should watch it. This is amazing, right?" And it took me a half an hour to find it. I had to go through all of my fucking videos because it starts when you look at, there's an image of a video, and I can tell what it is by that image. Well, there are about 20 of those that start out with a black screen, and it has some weird ass name. I make the weirdest shit names for these things, but they make sense when you put it in the context of what I'm talking about. But to try and find something, forget about it. Right? No wonder, but I had to look through all, 1,532 of my shows to find it, which was okay. You should look back. And I was looking back at that shit, and I was saying, all of this stuff is pretty good. I should, you guys should watch that shit more. And you look at them, and the ones from 3, 4, 5 years ago, they are still, there's like 200 and 300 watches, which to my mind is not bad. Each show, if I get 100 to 400 watch, some shows, 1,000 watches, but I'm not like humping for, a zillion, like John put me on in every video, at least in that section, when I told that first story of the old crone and then other stories, and then did ceremony in front of his camera and did shit like that. Each of those things got 70 to 100,000. And he was making $1,500, $1,800 a month of those. And, all he could scream at me was that it was costing him money. And he didn't even tell me he was doing it until I kind of put 2 and 2 together and said, oh, and, I stopped. And then he threw me out. So I said, fine. Went and bought myself a smartphone and asked the guy, so how do I do this YouTube thing? And that's how Dreamy Dreamland got started. So, yep. So, yep. What is we're going to do a show, him and I, and he's going to be the producer of all the commercials. And what you sang me a really nice commercial this afternoon. What was that? How'd you do that?
I can't remember, but you just need your own jingle, your own theme song. Every time Clint Eastwood walks into the room, they go.
Yes, a catchphrase. I thought, my catchphrase was "Love is all there is." That's my catchphrase. I guess that's too long or something. I don't know.
We'll get it'll happen. It'll be like a haiku kind of thing, or like some of these artists, Prince, Sting, Cher, these people who have just like a singular name.
Yep.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
Elvis.
Well, I did have one, the Dude.
The Dude. Yeah.
But it was taken. It's like I have to share it with Jeff Bridges, which not bad guy to share anything with. I like that guy.
You make a mean white Russian.
Yeah. Did you see the movie with him in it where it's about this hotel, like right on in Lake Tahoe, right on the border of California and was it Nevada, Lake Tahoe?
Yeah, I thought it was Seattle. It was a different movie.
But it's so this hotel, it's California and that, and on the Nevada side they have gambling, California side they don't. And this is this kind of really kind of hip kind of place where all the the Hollywood people would come and screw off. And J. Edgar Hoover built it, and every room had a two-way mirror, and he had a movie camera. So he would funnel all the politicians in them, and then have them have sex with animals and aliens and prostitutes, and then blackmail the politicians. And he was working for the mob, and so that's the setup of the movie. And then you see a 4-day period where they've lost the 16 millimeter film of Jack Kennedy, having an affair with a alien that had 15 tits, and so this FBI guy is sent there to find that, and and you know the guy who played Madman, the advertising guy, it was a TV show.
I'm drawing a blank.
Really good looking guy, amazing actor. He's in a lot of other stuff, and he has a real screen presence, right? So anyway, he comes on. He's the FBI guy, right? And so he's trying to pretend he's a badass because it's a badass place. And it's not full up. It's like winter time or whatever time that Lake Tahoe doesn't have a lot of people. And it's a place that has maybe 60 rooms and maybe 10 people are staying there. And they all have a secret. And about 5 of them are psychopaths and have murdered people. And they have like bodies in their suitcases and shit like that. So this guy doesn't make any phone calls on the hotel phone. He goes, down the road to a payphone and calls up Mr. Hoover. And so he goes, Mr. Hoover, you need to send the cavalry here. We have to arrest everybody. He goes, no. Because then they'd find out about the place. All you are there is to find that film, period. That's it. So he still has to kind of be a badass. He has to go and, so that's it. And it ends up in a just shootout. And Jeff Bridges is there because he's an old guy. And he had robbed the bank with his brother. And his brother got shot. And so he let his brother and the other guy they did it with escape. And he took the rap, right? So he spent like 18 years in jail. And his brother, who was shot, and the other guy went to this hotel. And that guy shot, killed his brother who was wounded, and then buried all of the money, like $2 million cash, in the floor of the hotel room, and then put it back and left with the body and stuck that in the desert someplace, and was going to wait it out. And he died of cancer, and so Jeff Bridges knew that they were going to go to this hotel, and he knew what room it was in. So he shows up 20 years later at this day when all these other people there, and he's dressed as a priest. So all these other people are really sketchy, yet he's a priest. So he's being very priestly and et cetera, et cetera. And he, I want this, I booked this room. And the guy goes, but there's all better rooms. There's nobody here. You don't have to, no, I want that room. So he gets it. He cuts up the rug. He pulls up the floor. He's got the suitcases of money, and he should have just left then. But he's a real old criminal. He knows so he knows that all these people are dirty. And so he's, wanting to, he wants to know. So he sticks around. And so it gets crazy. And at the end, there's this woman who's like, she did something bad, but not because she's a bad person. She was in the wrong place in the wrong time, and she's just running. And she ends up there, and she's like him. She can realize, because of where she came from, that people are who they are, and she could see them like I can see people. So Jeff can see people. She can see people. He knows that she's done something, but she's not a bad person. So as the priest, he's trying to talk to her, and she first starts to confide, and then she gets really pissed off. Right? And you fucking priest, I hate church. What do you want me to say? Anyway, so and there's these 2 sicko guys who kill people who want to have confession because they're Catholics and they've done all this bad shit, and they know it's catching up to them, and so they want to just and so it's it's like something bad at Hotel Whoopie-Doo, and I forget the real name, but that was one of his latest. He was old, and go look for it, Jeff Bridges, and read off his what movies, and it's been in the last maybe 5 years.
Okay, I want to check it out. Hey, I have reached my destination. I can see my friend in the window.
So you wasted enough time, so he should be anxious, so you can take advantage of him.
Oh, God. Finally. I only drink. So.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. Be safe out there. Hey, how's that snowstorm? Is it bad or good?
Oh, you know what? It cleared up a little once I finally reached the town.
Right.
And, I came back. Man, coming back here, you just wouldn't even know it.
Okay, good. Because I was saying prayers for you the whole way, because he was going up on a mountain in a big truck, and I was concerned with his safety. So, but here he is alive, Mr. Pork Chop. Thank you, Mr. Pork Chop. Okay, buddy. Anyway, so that's so let's get back to Lana. Good to see you, gang. Let's go to the top and see who's here since I last looked. Fish, evening. It's Anthony. Boop, 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 boop. YouTube. Let's see. What was that video? You like that video, Anth? Let's see. Guy wants to kill Al. I have that. I mean, look, that nun tried to kill me. That priest tried to kill me. A lot of people have tried to kill me. And can you imagine the sweet Al Bob? And I never have a gun. I never threaten anybody. And the people who try to kill me are people who think they're better than everybody else, like nuns and priests. Going to take the wrench. Yeah, I want to give it to Anthony and Fish and Lynn and Lana, because between the four of them, one of them will be there, right? So talk amongst yourselves, then educate me on how to do it, and we'll do it, right? Off show, right? We'll do it off show, or maybe up beyond show. I don't know. But let's work it out. And that's the first step to bringing Dreamy Dreamland into another, we're stepping up a step here, right? I'm having guests, and interviews. And because I used to do, I've been a radio guy. I got the radio voice. And somebody wants me to do that. So, it's clicking together. 2022 is going to be the year for all of us. All of us, through your assistance from your humble Sensei Al Bob, your griot, we will all take a step forward. And as we all go together, we will lift, all boats lift, the tide. And the tide lifts. We are going to be the tide that lifts all the boats in the most fun way. We're doing this with fun. Right, Len? Right. I haven't seen Lana. Lana's right here. Hello, Lana. There she is. Lana. Hey, Bubbo. And all. Wow. What is this video? Exactly. Always happy. Yep. Who is this human? Yes. Give me a question. Well, again, the lady who built the school, and she wrote a book. She was Swedish, Lana, and she was born in Sweden, and her father owned a big factory. So when she was born as a little girl, she was like a princess. She had her own pony. I mean, she lived in a castle, always amazing, but she was a total tomboy, totally into animals. And her father was an artist. He ran this big factory, and she became an artist at like 4. And by the time she was 6, she was a prodigy. And when she was 15, I think, she loved birds. And where they lived out in the mountains of Sweden, and it was like a bird sanctuary. And she would draw birds. And this in the days when cameras, the film was very slow. So anybody tried to take a picture of a bird, most times all you got was a blur. So when she was 15, her father took all of the pictures that she drew of birds, brought it to a publisher. They picked out the top, 100 birds that everyone wants to know about, and took those pictures. And she wrote the description, because she was also like a bird, and learned everything about these birds. And she wrote it and made a book. And to today, it is still the best-selling bird books in the world. And she's dead, like she died in 2008, right? So her story is, so she's coming from this amazing family. World War I happens. She's probably 12, 14, and then the 20s, she gets that book published. So she actually has money that it's not coming from daddy, but daddy's giving her whatever he wants. And so she goes to the Sorbonne in Paris and really becomes an artist and sculpture, and really the top, right? And then she runs into this Russian artist, George Solanovich, and they have this romance, right? And then World War II breaks out. And it's like something Casablanca meets God knows what. And Casablanca, that guy who used to do the paintings on public TV that had the big afro. So think of Casablanca meets that guy, meets Ursula Andrews, because Inga was pretty hot. And she was also the guy with she was a much better artist than George. George, Russian with an ego. So the guy who you saw screaming at me, genetically, it's amazing. You take the picture of Grandpa Solanovich, George, and Mishka, they look exactly the same. I was like they're clones. It's unfriggin' believable. And the amazing thing, now George, Grandpa was a socialist or a communist. He knew Lenin, Trotsky, and he was a Bolshevik, right? So he's a Bolshevik / scholar, right? So he's at the university. Stalin comes in. He has to run away from Stalin. He goes to Germany, right? And then has George, right? And George, doesn't want to have anything that he hates his father. Just, discuss politics, right? But he's just like him, right? Looks just like him and acts just like him. Has the same kind of ego like him, like size of Texas. And so he goes and becomes an artist. And he's like of the Salvatore Dali school, pen and ink. And he really got into airbrushing, right? So he was very good at airbrushing. But he was a one-trick pony, really. His ego and airbrushing was his thing. So he, should have gone to California. So he meets Inga, and they have this romance. World War II breaks out. So they're like trying to run out of Paris from the Germans, and they do. And they just kind of get stuck from this camp to that camp. And they were going to go back to Russia, and then Germany invades Russia. And so they're just on the run for 6 years. And Mishka was born in a, on the side of a road in a kill anything, he was born in 44. And Mishka was delivered by a Nazi doctor in a ditch along a road, and a P-47, which was a killing, and was designed to strafe the armies, right? And it had a cannon, so it could blow up tanks. It was kind of like the A-10 of its day. And so there's nobody out there in this, for miles along this flat field, this one little road and ditch. And this P-47 just spent an hour while this doctor is trying to deliver Mishka, shooting machine guns and a cannon, boom, 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 and they didn't get hit, but real close and a lot of. So just think of trying to have a baby when that's going on, and just think if you are Mishka, the guy who's yelling at me, why do you think he was that way? Because his first instinct outside of the womb was, and even when he was in the womb, he was trudging through the mud and not eating enough, and getting hearing the echoes of his father screaming. Anyway, so the war ends. They go into a camp because they're not Jewish enough. They're not. They're have no religion, right? And so and Sweden won't take any of those people who escaped Sweden back, at least not in the 40s. Europe was a mess in the 40s, and so and America wouldn't let them in. And so unless you were Jewish, and where they got to go, they went to Don't Cry For Me, Argentina. So, all the Germans who were trying to kill them, they now met Argentina. And they, it's all water on the bridge. Well, how about doing a painting of me and the kids? And so they made money doing that. They did that for about a year. And they made it to New York. And then they made paintings of the rich white New York aristocrats, and they saved it. And they lived in a little teeny friggin' place in the Lower East Side with all the other immigrants, and they saved their money. And all they did for fun was they had a map of America, and they would throw darts at it every night after getting drunk, and where the dart hit, they put a pin, right? And they did that for about 8 months until they had, about $8,000. And the place that they wanted to get out of New York, and so the place that they had the most pins was Roanoke, Virginia. And that's how they counted him. And they drove in, and because they had this, George had this unbelievable thick Russian accent, they thought they were spies. And they were just looking for a place where we can find peace, right? And so everyone wouldn't even talk to them. And this one black guy said, "So what are you looking for?" "Oh, 100 acres. He goes, "Come with me." So where this place is, why this place is the Cherokee, the thing I tell you about the hill, is because the Cherokee, they didn't want to get killed by Andrew Jackson. So the Cherokee kind of, after the Civil War, that the guys who were still kicking around married or had babies with the black folk. And so all the black folk lived up on this mountain called Chicken Mountain above Pogue Valley. And so this guy, his family had like 600 acres. He had 200. He was getting really old. He had no kids. So he said, "How much money do you want to spend?" And George said, $5,000. And in 1950, whatever, that's a lot of money for a guy who had no money. So he said, "Okay, take a look at this." And they did and found it, and that's his place. So by that time, they also had their little daughter, whatever her name was. And so here are these two kids, white folks, American, Mishka gets here when he's probably 4 or 5 from Argentina. And then his sister shows up the next year or so. So they speak English. They're white Americans, they fit in. So, but their parents are these crazy bohemian Russian artists, And so what's really strange is these kids looked at their parents. "Oh, I can't stand him." Just like George couldn't stand his father. Now Mishka can't, and he looks just like him. And so, and he acts. I knew George. So there I am in New York when all this is going on, and I'm working at, Joe Battle Foundry. I was learning to cast bronze. And I would take all these. I was an artist. I was whatever kind of job like that. Yeah, I'll learn that. And I learned how to do spray metallizing, which is a very interesting thing. You could spray metals like paint. And that's the whole thing about, nanotechnology kind of came from that. Long path from that, but it was material handling. So I did that shit with Joe. And they showed up there, and Inga had these reverse cast wax things she wanted to cast. These little statues of really beautiful things, birds and horses and all kinds of stuff. She had about 20. So, we were the real deal. So we weren't just going, "Oh yeah, we could do it." Blah, blah, blah. No, we did all kinds of tests, and she, and so they found us, and people said, "Yeah, these guys are the real deal." So I was about, 19 or 20 when I was working for Joe, at least that time. And they showed up, and we, we did Inga's thing. So I got to know them for about 2 weeks. They were there for about 2 weeks, and we had a great time, because they kind of knew New York. They had spent a little less than a year before they moved on to Roanoke, or maybe a year. And, the swinging 60s, what was going on the east side in the 60s or early 70s, which when I lived down there. Anyway, long story short, we had a great time. Mishka was this little kid, I don't even think they had them. I think they left them back in Roanoke, and because Grandpa was there and his wife, Grandma was there, so they were living there. And they had a crew there, right? That people who they knew from Europe who gone through that Holocaust with them. So Inga had the most amazing take on life. Live and let live. Every minute of your life matters. Have the best time. Do your best. Be your best. She's the best person. And nothing fazed her. I mean, after going through 4 years of that, delivering a baby in a ditch on an American fighter who's supposed, oh, yes, America, great. Oh, we're proud of them. We're just going to try and kill them. We don't care who you are. The pilot said, well, there was this 12-mile square area. We called it a killing zone. Anything in it, we just killed it. Horses, and they killed the animals that these people who were starving depended on. Who knew? Who cared? I just love flying my airplane and blowing up things. That's the American way. And so Inga had this amazing thing, and George, had serious PTSD, way back from his dad, and then all of this shit, and then all of that shit, and then and so he wheeled and dealed, and he was great at that. Here, I'll show you this painting. Give me a car. He did a lot of that. And so and he kind of ripped off everybody he could, right? So everyone loved Inga, everyone hated George. But he did really weird shit that some people said, well, so I gave him a car for a painting. I like that painting in my living room. That's why I got it. I liked it. Whether it's worth anything, who cares? And so I didn't see those guys for another 30-something years. And then I come to Roanoke, and I'm becoming the dude in Roanoke and downtown. And there's a number of bars that I hang out, read palms, do all that kind of stuff. While I'm doing all the other stuff I'm doing. And I meet this guy, Jeff, who is the big, he is the Hound. He has a band. What was it called? But it was kind of Bebop Hoedown. That was it. Bebop Hoedown. So it was bebop kind of jazz mixed with reggae, mixed with everything. And he was, congas, really amazing drummer. Just his hands were magic. And so he lived in one of the little houses they had here called Dumpington. And it was like their dump of all the other construction crap they had. They just dump it there. And then they built a house on top of it and rented it out to Jeff. And Jeff was the party, that cartoon where there's the cricket who has the violin and parties all the time, and the ants are busily making things. Well, that was Jeff, the cricket. And he had these parties that were. So I was in this one restaurant. What was it called? Sal. It was an Italian kind of bar, and the guy tried to pretend he was a mobster, but he was just a plumber. And so he got this building real cheap for doing something, but he was definitely a New Yorker. And a friend of mine waited there, and so I hung out there, and when my friend was there, and I kind of sit at a table, and I had my my little bag with me that had my magic hat and had books and stuff, and I would just sit there for hours. He'd start at 5 when happy hour, and he'd leave at midnight, right? And so I would go there and just hang out. And the first time I was there, I read a few people's palms, and boy, that was pretty. And I had a rule wherever I worked. So if I'm sitting at some waitress's table and I'm there for 5 hours, and I never I don't charge anybody for anything I do except electric or consulting. But my being the healer, griot, like you guys, I'm not charging. I'm saying, hey, put something in my PayPal, please, please, please do. Go and want to talk to me. It's the dudewake42 at Gmail, dudewake42 at Gmail. So anyway, Saltori's, that's the name of the bar. And it was 3 floors high. It was beautiful. Big dining room and a stage. Then the second floor had a mezzanine and a stage, and you went up and lots of couches. So you go up there and do stuff. And then the third floor, they had like gambling and pool tables. And you can only get up there. There was a fire staircase and an elevator. And to get to that floor, you had to put a key in. So you're going up there, you had to go to the bar, and they had this key. And so you had, you had to have know somebody, put some money down, whatever, right? So it was an interesting place. So I would, went there. My friend was a waiter, and I sat at a table. And so I first, 5 o'clock, there's nobody there, and people are setting up, and a cute waitress, hey, let me read the palm, and she, whoa. I said, sit down, let me do your cards. And I do I can do a full reading in about 15 minutes. Now, if you want a real in-depth one, that takes a little longer. But the 15-minute full Monty will get you crying and just blow your mind to like, how can you? I don't even know this guy. He knows me better than myself. Ah! So the first time I was there, I read everyone, right? And the lady who is the waitress, she was the first one. And so she just kept bringing me wine. She wants something to eat. And I said, sure. So I'll have that. Anyway, so that happens. And then the crowd comes in. And then and all the waitresses that I read to, you should go talk to that guy. He's amazing. And so that first night I was there, I made like $300, right? And so the owner is like watching me. And I give, and I had money because I had businesses, I had stuff. So I had like 3 or 4 Benjamins in my pocket. And the waitress, who was my waitress, who I sat at her table so nobody else sat there, I said, come here, Beth. Here's something for you. And she looks at it and she's, is this real? I said, it's all for you, honey. And she goes, I said, I made, a couple $100, I sat at your table. You didn't get any tips. This is for you. And from now on, when I come in here, whoever's table, I'm going to share that. And not only that, I got up, I went over to where the big glass tube was, and I put $160 because a lot of people give me 20s. And I put and there were loads of $1 bills. I just stuffed all these 20s in there. And I said, and this thing goes to everybody, right? And the bartender said, yeah, all the servers and me and the other 2 bartenders. How about the guys in the back? And he goes, no. So I went into the kitchen and said, where's the chef? And I gave him 120s, right? So I still, I was ahead of the game by about $100, even after, giving her a Benjamin. And then I walk out of the kitchen and the guy goes, who the fuck are you? And I said, glad to meet you. I'm Al Bob. And he goes, I'm Jody's friend. Oh, yeah, he told me about you. And I said, I watch you watching me. You're a New Yorker, aren't you? He goes, what? I said, let me look at your palm. And so I did that to him, and he was going, and then, so by this time it's like 1 in the morning, and they're kind of right. And the guy who's the head bartender, he goes up to Sal and he goes, so we made an extra $2,000 tonight above what we normally make. And I said, that's me, Sal. And he goes, what? I said, yeah. I made everybody happy. They bought more drinks. More people came in. People called other people up. And did you notice how everything was full up? And he goes, you can come here anytime you want. So for the next 3 years, that was my Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night thing. And I'd make those 3 days, I made $1,000, and I would give half of it to everybody. So, man, I was Mr. Popular. So all the bands would come in. So anybody who worked, anyone who showed up, any band, anything like that, those people got a free reading. So Jeff, he's like Mr. Totally groovy with it, but he's unbelievably Republican, conservative. Everything is scam, blah, blah, blah. So all his band people came and got a reading from me, and this guy's amazing. Jeff Gore, it's free. If you're part of the band, you can get it. And Jeff, I don't know. It's a scam. He's full of crap. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So, I kind of this little ear, kind of heard that. So before he starts up, they have a table. There's a table by the bandstand. That's like the green room. They don't have a green room. That table's the green room. So I go over there, and so Jeff, he kind of looks up at me. Well, everyone's talking about Jeff. He's the leader of the band. It's his band, blah, blah, blah. So I've read all his bands. So I know everything about Jeff because these guys have told me every fucking thing about him. I don't even have to read his palm. And that's what a good shrink, a good scam artist, a good reader advisor does. They keep their ears open. They keep their eyes open. They really don't speak unless they can say something that like everyone goes. So I kind of stand there and said, Jeff, come on, put your hand up. Oh, you're a fake, blah, blah. I said, what are you, chicken? I knew that was like the hook he couldn't say. Yeah, well, tell me about myself. And because of all the shit these guys told me about him, and then the stuff I could pick up, I just laid him on the floor. I talked about his mother, about the shit that happened to us as a child. I just went down, down. And he was like, And so from that point on, even when he wasn't playing there, he knew I'd be there Thursday, Friday. He would come and ask me about what happened to this happened to me. What should I do? So I became his reader advisor, right? So we became really solid buddies because he is an amazing musician, and he is a great guy, and he is a load of fun. Even though he is the most Republican, conservative, unbelievable. You look at him, you would think he is stone cold hippie because he smoked pot, like past tense, like, a chimney. Anyway, so he said, you got to come up to my house. You love this place. And so I said, so tell me, we drew me a map. And he wasn't, musicians don't make much money, but I had, a daytime job, right? Plus, every time I did this, I did pretty freaking good. Even giving half of it away, I still would walk out with $500 every night. That's not a bad gig. And having a lot of fun, got a lot of phone numbers, not a bad. And then I got a place to live just down the street on Luck. It was an old kind of speakeasy. It was a warehouse. And it was a lot of things. And the guy only used about a fifth of it. He sold linoleum. So anyway, I had a good time with Jeff, and I would go visit him. And every time I come up, I would, this is the Italian in me, I would bring food and I'd make him dinner because he had a nice kitchen. He never cooked, microwave. That was all he did. He had all these pots in the sink that he burnt out. He's not a cook. So the first time I went up there went with a lot of vegetables, onions, and escarole and raviolis. Really good meal and good loaf of bread. And so I cleaned his kitchen up and then cooked him a great meal. And I bought 2 bottles of wine, some great pastries from my friend who was a pastry chef. She made these eclairs that were like, and her, what is that? Napoleons. So I had a box of those and really good coffee. I had a big thermos with really good coffee, like the whole thing espresso. So I just steam up milk and mix that in there. And so, and I brought what else did I bring? I brought a bottle of Jack and 3 bottles of wine. And he had the herb. So I made him amazing. I cleaned his kitchen and I made him amazing dinner. And, and we got plastered. And he had the Dumpington's a great space, has a great view down into the valley. And the living room, George made these great couches all around that were, 12 feet long in every direction. Big, thick, so you could sleep. I mean, those were beds, not just couches. And so, that first night we just, had a great old time. And, when I left, he said, you can come up anytime, meaning he knew that I would feed him at least. And I left him enough food that he would have something to eat for at least the next 3 days. So, and I left 1 bottle of wine that I didn't bring out and said, I'm leaving. And the Jack and the wine, I'm leaving for you. And he gave me something just as nice to take back. Right. So I never buy that stuff. It's always given to me. Right. And that's why I hang out with musicians. So, we became fast friends. And he was always, you're not a hoax and you're not this and you're not that. And you're not a hippie and you're just Al Bob and there's no one else like you. And that's why I like you, because you're not like all the other same as they ever were, scumbags. And I could tell that, he had bad runs and probably with other women. So anyway, so I kept coming up every now and then and making him dinner and hanging out with him. When I ran out of leaf, I would go up and see him. And so, it's one time he goes, you really need to, you and Inga are like, you're the same, you're just cut from the same cloth. You're both, what you are and not like anybody else. And you can't be judged. There is no judging you. And so he takes me down to, the next morning. We drive down there and we go in and Inga's sitting in her easy chair and she's, got a libation. And she looks up and she goes, oh, Jeffy, you haven't paid me rent in 4 months. Where's the rent? And he laughs. Oh, you'll get it. And then she looks up and sees me and she goes, she sees in her eyes the guy who made her bronze statues that are kind of all around her. And she goes, there you are. I go, there you are. And that was from that point on, that's how we greeted. There you are. There you are. And it was like, 30 years had passed, and it was like I just saw her yesterday. And so I sit down and we start talking, and Jeff kind of goes, do you two know each other? And she goes, oh, he's my best friend. He casted all these, and Jeff he's like lost in the story. He just doesn't understand. But he does, like in here, because he said, you got to meet this lady, Inga, my landlord. She's just like you. Her husband, dickhead, but an interesting guy too. I mean, I liked him. I took care of him and that's what he paid his rent for a whole year. But George had a stroke, and Inga couldn't pick him up and move him around. But our friend Jeff did, and he has a heart of gold. But once you think of him as like, oh, he's a hippy dippy guy, and then you start talking, oh my God, he's a Ronald Reagan, ridiculous conservative. Then he got. He got married, had kids, moved off the hill, and he became a businessman. He has one of the bigger cell phone companies in this town. I mean, whatever Jeff does, he's amazing at it, right? So when he was a lush and, a carousing hooligan musician, he did that really. He was the best at it, He whatever he does, he's like, holds to my rule, do your best, be good at what you're doing. And he was. So, and we're still tight, I haven't seen him in at least 4 years, but every time I walk in, it's like, he goes, so did you bring me dinner? Stuff like that, or we go out and he buy me dinner. Because he's not worrying about money. And he didn't worry about money because he came from a family that had money, like a South Roanoke family. So anyway, Inga and I engaged, and we told each other stories. And I had a place downtown, and I had houses out in the next town over, and I had stuff in Lynchburg, and so I didn't need really a place to stay. And in her place, if we talked, her house, she had 2 or 3 bedrooms. I could just crash in one of them. But, as we talked, and she, everyone on that mountain, just like Jeff, didn't pay the rent. Now, Jeff was right. So when he moved out of there, and found his girl and got married and had kids, and then started teaching, and made his 35 grand. He paid Inga off. He was but he just, when he was the cricket with the violin, he just kept kicking. Oh, Inga, she's got money, but he paid her off. And 2 other people who lived, they had about 6 houses that they rented out. And that was their livelihood, other than their art. And so, and George didn't make cash. He just made these trades. So. So I started, bringing up the food to Inga and all the rest. And then, like about 2 years after that, of me doing all this stuff, and she goes, she had all these, yesterday's sons, right? And Eddie Boy and a few others. And she goes, you're my best son, right? And now don't say anything to the others, but you're my best. She goes, I relate to you better. I know who you are. When I met you in New York and you cast, I know. I mean, everyone says things about you and they have no idea who you are and what you do because you don't brag. You don't wear it on your sleeve, And I said, gee, thanks. I love you too. And so anyway, the first day, so for 2 years, I'm hanging with her like at least twice a month. I go up there. You need anything? Let's go to town. Let me take you to lunch. Let me do that. Or I would bring stuff up. And she used to have a thing called the Grand Canyon. It was a tray in a refrigerator and had sausage and cheese and bread. And whenever somebody came to visit, right, Lana, you can attest to this, right? The Swedish always has something in that fridge to share with a traveler because they may be the traveler, right? So everyone's, the only other place I ever saw better hospitality than Sweden was in the Mideast because Islamic people, the base foundation of their culture is hospitality. And for the same reason, not snowed in, but deserts. So anyway, and Inga was 100% Swedish. So what was this human? So Mishka, that human, was the son. And he looked at his bohemian parents, and he was so he's going to school with all these uptight, inattentive white kids from South Roanoke, and that's what he wants to be. And same with and his sister, more than that. Now her sister, because where these guys lived, she got permission from the school district to ride her horse to school because no bus could get up there, especially in the wintertime. And so every girl's dream to have her pony, this girl would ride to school, and she hated it. She felt like she was a poor, like a peasant. And she's never got over that. She married a guy who just killed himself to make money, to make her feel rich, and built beautiful houses and had a house on Smith Mountain Lake and all the rest. And they had two beautiful kids, and they wasted a good chunk of their life in trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? And luckily, those kids had Inga as grandma because instead of hanging out with their uptight, anal retentive, crazy parents who were drunks all the time, they stayed with grandma. And they got really, one is, runs a thing for kids, counseling and servicing. And she worked in the school system, and her other sister is an artist, and her husband is an artist. And they lived here for a while. I don't know if they live here anymore. But anyway, and I think she became a doctor, right? And so I'm not quite sure. But the kids turned out great by living with grandma, just like me, right? So anyway, after about 2 years, Mishka shows up. And, and I'm still living down there. But the hurricane, I'm going, I should try to really, four-wheel drive. I can drive through anything kind of vehicle. And I'm going up and down that road so much in snowstorms and this. Whenever anything, I would be the guy who would go up and check on it, not the other yesterday's sons, because they were too busy. And so I basically went up there when this hurricane was to check on her. And I knew her son was coming. I was wondering if he needed to be picked up or whatever. So I get there, and there's, she's in her chair, and she's got her libation. And she goes, oh, come over and give me a kiss. There you are. Hey, you want anything from Grand Canyon? I said, yeah. I said, so everything's okay? The house ain't blown away? Oh, this place will stand up to anything. And electricity out? And no, we haven't lost electricity. But when we do, it's no big deal. We got flashlights and kerosene lanterns, and it's summertime, so no problem. So I said, where did Mitch go? Right? Oh, yeah, he's been a deer. I said, so why isn't he here with you? She goes, oh, he went over to Moonsong and to check out the road and the culvert just to make sure it doesn't wash out, because that's why this stream behind their property that fills their pond, that's their swimming hole, it goes shooting down this hill because it's this thing that they're on is very steep property. So I goes, what is he, nuts? She goes, well, it's Mishka. I said, well, she goes, go check on him. I haven't seen him in 2 hours. I said, are you concerned? She goes, yeah. So I go and drive my vehicle that can go through anything. And it's a hurricane. Trees are down. I'm like driving over them. And I get to where the culvert is, and he's down there. And everything's flooded. The water is rushing by, millions of gallons flying by him. And he's like in shorts and flip-flops. And he's pulling all of this green matter, which is poison ivy, out so it doesn't go through the culvert. But this water is going so fast, whatever goes in is going to shoot out the other end, ripped apart. And so he doesn't have to do that. There's no saving the day. And because, like I said, it's like ridiculous amount of water. And so, and nothing's going to stop it. And that culvert's it's 36 inches diameter. It's not going to go, unless you had a gigantic boulder go boom, 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 and smack into it. Well, then it would rip it out of the road, and you would have a new hole for a new culvert. So anyway, I kind of yell at him. He's like doing this. I just lean on the horn, and he finally looks up, and I go, your mom, she needs you. And he kind of got that. And so now he can be a hero for his mom. So he kind of climbs up, and he's all cut up because of the brambles and the stuff. And he's drenched to the bone, and he's sneezing, right? And so I get him in the car. Who are you? I'm out. Oh, I heard about you. You're blah, blah, blah. Yeah. He said, you're another artist, like my mom. I said, well, no one's like your mom. So we drive back. Where'd you get this? I said, I have this. I bought it. You bought this? You can afford this? And I said, yeah. Because he's thinking of his parents and poverty and blah, 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 right? And so, and he's like, I said, so I hear you're a psychoanalyst. No, I said, a psychologist. No, I'm a psychoanalyst, right? And no one uses that term. I mean, I have an MSW. No one uses that term. I mean, it's like you're showing off, right? Because you're either an MD shrink or a counselor, one or the other, right? Or a social worker. And I was kind of somewhere in between all three. So he's right, man. He's just going on and on about how great a guy is, and he's in Germany, and he's got to practice, and all these people depend on him, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I said, so why were we at the culvert? That water's going through there. Well, I had to save the culvert. I said, you weren't doing anything. Of course, I was pulling all that. I said, buddy, that was so much water. No matter what went in there, it was going to shoot up the other end. And when I first saw you, I thought you were crazy, man, because if you slip, you're wearing flip-flops. You slipped on that rock, you went in that water, you were going to go right through that culvert, 36 inches. And in the culvert, they dig a hole, they put a culvert. I built a lot of roads and pulled out a lot of clogged culverts. And what happens is the stone that you put on top of the culvert, as the cars run over, it pokes holes in the culvert. So if it's a metal one, it has these holes all through it that are like razor blades. So anything that goes through there is going to get sliced up, right? Unless like it's a big boulder, right? That's the only thing that'll stop it. So, I said, you're lucky to be alive. Oh, I've lived, I know everything about you. So I grew up here, blah, 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 blah. I said, why aren't you here? Why are you in Germany? Why don't you take care of your mom? Didn't like any of those questions. You don't know. Who are you? You're not, who are you to judge? I said, I'm not judging you. I'm asking you questions, like a psychologist would, And so I was doing that. And that video you saw, this crazy guy with a bald head, that's, Mishka Solanovich, who looks just like George Solanovich, who looks just like Grandpa Solanovich. I mean, like a clone. And they all acted the same. Ego the size of Texas. They're always right. Everyone's wrong. Anyway, I get him up there and I said, buddy, and I go, before we get out of the car, I go into my, little side box of my car and I get out a bag of jewel weed and I get a bar of Castile soap. So if you're in the woods and you walk amongst poison ivy, first thing you do is go home and you lather up with a Castile soap and go in the shower, right? And wash that off. And then lather up again good with the Castile soap and wash it off. And then first take the jewel weed, rub it all over you, right? And then put the Castile soap on top of that and then wash yourself off. And then come out and put the jewel weed on you all over again and then put your clothes on. You'll never get poison ivy. Even if you're allergic to it, you'll never get it, right? So I say, why don't you go take here's jewel weed, here's Castile soap. And I gave him that. He said, I'm not doing it. I don't even need to. I was out in the water. I'm clean. I don't have to. And he doesn't really change his clothes. And he starts coughing and coughing and coughing. And I just go, well, I just came up to see if you're here, and good to meet you, Mishka. I'll come back in a few days when it's sunny. And she comes, oh, give me a kiss. My second day son, my other son, Saturday son, something like that. The son that came from another mother, right? So I do that, and I drive away. And a couple of days later, I drive up, and she goes, can you take me to the hospital? I said, you okay? She goes, well, Mishka, after you left, he just got worse and worse. And the next day, he had a fever, and he, and you had to, get the tractor out and do stuff. And he basically, we had to call an ambulance. And what has happened is he has pneumonia, and it's gotten really bad because you were right about the poison ivy. He's gotten the poison ivy in his bloodstream. He's going septic and he has pneumonia. So he's like on a ventilator, and all he had to do was take the shower, nice hot water. His mother wanted to give him a cup of tea, and he stayed in his wet clothes until he went to bed, without caring about that he's sitting on his mom's couch in these wet clothes. And then the next morning he was coughing and sneezing and scratching, and then he goes out and starts the tractor and screws and broke the tractor. And then that afternoon he had to be taken away in an ambulance. And so he spent a month in the hospital, and then he came out of that and he went back home. And the next 4 times he came that I saw him, he would do the same thing, get sick and not really hang out with his mom or, so it was psychological. He had an issue, and that this was the way he diverted from dealing with the things he should have dealt with, right? And and Inga and I talked about it all the time when he wasn't there, about everything about her, and she wrote a book about it. And so he came, over the next 4 years or 5 years, he came at least 4 times. At least in that many years, there were a couple of summers that he didn't, he skipped that summer, but he was there at least 4 times. So I got to know him, and he would do shit and he'd fuck it up seriously, and I go take care of it because it was Inga's house and she'd have to deal with it. And I never rubbed it in his face and everything. And then about 3 years into that, Inga says, I really have no money. Mishka, I said, what about your kids? Your daughter, she's got this rich guy. They have these big houses. She goes, well, they're living beyond their means. They have these 2 big fancy schmancy houses, and and they have to always buy a new car and have fancy clothes, and so they spend every nickel they have. So they don't, and she never comes up. And Mishka's in Germany, never hear from him. Calls once in a while. But you're here every other week or every week, and so you know what? She goes, I know, you've showed me, everyone thinks you're this, but you don't wear it on your sleeve. You're a landlord. You got this. You got businesses. You got all kinds of stuff going on, and I've been here 50 years, so I know all the other. So you're involved in politics. You're involved in all this social stuff. I mean, you're doing all this stuff, and the people in the know who you are, and my children who think they are like whoop-de-doo, they're not in the slipstream of all this. So that school up there, that girl has been living in it for the last 5 years and hasn't paid me a nickel. And she's just going deeper and deeper into drugs and alcohol. And that's when she said, this Hill is this spiritual thing. It doesn't understand humans. It just wants to make them happy. And that's why I'm going on with the story of, what is it? Happiness or pleasure. And the Hill, you want to feel this way? And so people wanted to be drunk, wanted to do drugs, wanted to have sex like, since it's 1999, all that pleasure stuff. Well, the Hill doubled down on it, right? So she goes, you have money, and you were telling me how you sold that one building and that you were going to buy some more property downtown. Why don't you buy the school? Because I had to get rid of 125 grand, or I'd have to pay 70 in tax and have nothing for it, right? So I said, sure, I'll buy the building. So she goes, so you and I will go to my lawyer. She goes, no, my son-in-law, who really loves me and I really love him, he thinks he is like, Mr. Businessman, and he doesn't want you to take advantage of me. And I said, really? And she goes, yes, I know you never, So anyway, of course, I am Mr. Businessman. I went to the tax office downtown, and I said, so to the tax guy, so what is this property worth? I want the lot numbers. I want the little map. I want the description. I want the deed. I want a copy of the deed. I'm going to buy this thing, so I want all the pertinent information from my lawyer. I said, no problem. $12, printed it out, single zygo, right? So it said right there, the state and the county valued that property at $40,000, period. And it was totally trashed out, right? So, and the road was like we still have, terrible. Like nobody in his right mind would want to buy that, right? So I, get this call from her son-in-law and said, hi, I'm Inga's son-in-law, and I'm Mr. Businessman, and I want you to come to my office and we're going to talk about the deal. I said, yeah, no problem. So we go to that, and he's got this kind of rinky-dink. He sells, when you go into a restaurant and they have the placemats, and they have the advertisements, he says, I'm in advertising. That's what he did. He had placemats, and he would sell those little things, and he would give the placemats to the restaurants, So that's not like AT&T or General Electric or General Motors, But he's got his nice little business, and I'm not going to put him down for it. But he's got this little rinky-dink office in West Roanoke, and it's not like Southside Roanoke or downtown Roanoke or anyway. So okay, it's like in this little strippy mall next to the tattoo shop, and so I go, sure. So what do you want to say? He says, well, that building is worth $125,000. I said, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's good. Good to know. And that's exactly what I had to spend so I wouldn't have to pay out 70 grand in tax. And I knew this guy was a straight shooter for Inga. So I said, Inga, I've never met this guy. So we make the deal. The money's all going to you, correct? And she goes, oh, he's, he is my other favorite son. I mean, he is like, you tell stories, but I know they're true. I mean, I knew you for 2 weeks in New York, and I knew, everyone was, you were the dude. I mean, so everything yes, and that's when she wasn't the only one, but she said, you're a griot. And she goes, you know what that is? I said, yep, I live with. Anyway, so when he said that, I said, sure, no problem. He goes, what do you mean? No problem. I said, 125. That's it. I said, and I had a lawyer, and I said, so here is a piece of paper, and what's it say? It said, this, it had all the stuff from the county, the lot number, this number, right? And it was a signing document, not the contract, but the signing document stating this was the price that's agreed upon. And had my lawyer, and the guy was a well-known lawyer in the state, not just in Roanoke, in the state. And so he's looking at it, and he's like, I said, yeah. How'd you know I was going to ask for 125? I said, sign it. So, and I signed it, and I said, okay, let's go to the record office in town, and let us, get it stamped, and then they will make 4 copies for each of us that are stamped, certified with the state and the county that this is the contract agreement. And we, it stated, when the closing and the contract thing and the earnest money and all that stuff was stated. And so we didn't have to go back and forth between lawyers. My lawyer drew it all up for the amount of money that I wanted to give to Inga, and Inga knew that her son-in-law, and he was just like, and like within 2 hours, we had finished it, and then we went off to this bar I hung out, and they, hey, Al, and this guy never went in this place, and we sat down at my table that I would do readings at, and it was a tapas bar, so they brought out little plates of food, and they started bringing us wine, and I said, do you want anything else? He said, no, wine's great. This is great wine. I drink it. So he's drinking. He goes, how can you afford all this? I said, I'm a businessman. And he said, I thought you were a bum. You're an artist. You're a bum. I said, not really. Anyway, so, he still did not believe that. And he told people that I, got back from other people. This guy's bad-mouthing you. And I said, well, you know me. You're a lot more interesting and important. You know him, right? So you know me and you know him. And he goes, you don't have to say anymore, Al. So the more he badmouthed me amongst the business community, the more he was screwing himself. So that is the lesson here, kids. You don't have to attack anybody. And he was a good enough guy. And he wasn't evil. And that's basically, so the next few shows are about good and evil and what it's about. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So how many hours? Oh, look at that. Isn't that an amazing coincidence? 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 22 seconds. Well, we got a few more hours to go. Long story short, closing, they still didn't believe it. Both the lawyers, his lawyer and my lawyer, no, this guy, he put the money in escrow the day you put that contract signing down. It's been in the bank, and as soon as you sign it, the money's in your account. what's your problem, buddy? I didn't say that. His own lawyer said, this guy is amazing. His own lawyer said to him, this guy's got it going, right? And for the next 12 years that I knew his wife, him, and Mishka, they kept, and you saw the video, and the angst that Mishka was going on about was that he just, he knew his mother could depend on me, but not him. And she died. And he never got to say anything. And so when he was like trying to, climb down into the hole. It was like pretty high school. Let's see. Where is this? What time is it? Oh, it's still early. We can call up our boy. So here's another guy who is really interesting. His heart is in the right place, but he too thinks he is right and everyone else is wrong. If they made him God, he would bring heaven on earth. But he's an interesting guy, and he's comes from Mormon folk who are really super rich. So he's never had to worry about, anything. Where is this guy? Oh, there he is. See if he answers. But he's a night owl. He should be there. Phone is ringing.
Hello?
There he is. How you doing, champ?
I'm doing pretty good.
So did
I'm
you
on
get?
the other line, though.
Okay. You want me to call back later?
Let me call you. I won't talk very long because I'm getting ready to crash.
Okay. Did you get all those links I sent you?
Yeah.
Did you get the one with the comedians?
Comedian.
Yeah, Robin Williams.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, I said it's hilarious. I thought you'd love it. It's really gets you laughing. It's like snorting milk out your nose kind of laughter. Okay, so finish your conversation and call me back.
All right.
Okay. So he's all about, first he's all about, I try to give him my story. He goes, "You're a conspiracy theorist, right?" And then, and no one could get away with it because the media would, and now he's kind of realized that the media is totally bought. And then he said, well, the only way we can fix this is to get public radio to represent the people. The only way you can get America to be, get better is to inform the public. And I tried to explain to him that the public has already been brainwashed into their little silos, and it's going to take a little bit more than that. And so he thinks that public radio, I said, give me a break. I mean, public radio has more commercials than commercial radio, and it's all big corporations. Oh, Inside Edition is brought to you by Mobil Oil, and Morning IQ Radio is brought to you by Big Pharma, and and this guy is the Mormon version of Mishka, which is the guy you saw in the movie, right? So, it's like, really? Okay. So, but he's got a really good heart, and Mishka does too, but he's got such a scale on him. He's, he thinks he knows it all, that he has got it. This guy is the same, but he's sweeter. He really is sweeter. And he's an artist. So at least he's an artist, so at least he's got that art culture kind of thing going on. But so, I can tell you a story, right? And I go on and on, but I know I do. And so I try to, I come back to you guys and see what you're saying. Hope you and Mom are happy, Anthony. Yep. Get Viber, and then we will talk. Yeah, Lana, have you been getting, I've been like trying to call you every now and then. I have no idea when's the best time to call you because I just have no idea. Finland is hardcore. Yep. Norwegian is a pussy. Yes. Denmark is selfish. Sweden is confused. Perfect, Lana. And I lived in, what town did I live in, Lana? I told her, and I described it, and I forgot to, because I lived in this like littler town near the town where her brother is. It's called Fort Sugar. And I described where it was. She didn't know quite Fort Sugar, but she knew the neighborhood and said that city near the lake. Yeah, that's the place. So I lived there, and it was on this road that went from, Norway to Finland, Norway to Sweden to Finland. And so Finns and Swedes would be on this road back and forth. And I used to hitchhike on that road with my wife. And we would mostly get picked up, not by Swedes, unless they were younger, but older Swedes just right by us. But the Norwegians and the Finns, especially the Finns, they are nuts. But loads of fun, and usually half in the bag. And my wife, I showed you pictures of her, Donna Ann, and she's a cute little thing. And when we were there, we did not stay there in the wintertime. You do not want to be in, but summertime, the sun never sets, and they have these great parties. Lana, WTF, Lana, in the summertime, they have the prawn festivals. Because what you put on hold there, a message is held in review. You're right on. And do you want me to show it to the crowd, or do you want me to keep it in a message review? And so tell everyone about summertime in Sweden, because the sun never sets, period. You never get a dark sky in the summertime, right? And so you have this country in the wintertime for like 5 months. You never see the sun. At best, you just have a grayness, so you can't, and the rest of it's just pitch black, all day long, right? Noon, it's, maybe a little silvery, but, all morning up to about 11, it starts to get a little light. And by 1, it's black again. And that's the winter. We were there for just, we left, because we kept going down to Stockholm and the capital, and getting on the airplane and going all over the world. And what was that? Let's see if I have my ringers on, if he's going to call me back. And but the summertime is amazing. Let's see. In Midtown, down low. Yep, Middletown. So tell the kids about the winter and the summer and the difference, Lana. Yeah. So, okay, we're all good. And what time should I call you, Lana? Junka poking. But what you said about, and I'll read it to the gang. Finland is hardcore. Norwegian is a pussy. And Denmark is selfish. And Sweden is, what would you say? Confused. Yes, exactly. It's a lot of free church cheese. There is also undeserved cites it. Universities. Yes, there are. I mean, it's a lot. Sweden it's a great social net country. I mean, it really takes care of its people really well. Taxes are kind of like, how much does a pack of cigarettes in your neighborhood store cost, Anna? I remember, so I get on the airplane and I would fly to like Italy. And this is in 1977, right? And I was in a market in Italy, and they had rabbit ears. You put on your television the rabbit ears, right? And in Sweden, if you had an antenna on your chimney for your TV, they would charge you like $1,000 tax, because the state ran TVs. They only had one TV station, and it would run from 6 p.m. till midnight, and it was only in black and white. This is 1977, and they would have like mostly no entertainment, no game shows, no sports. They had documentaries on the sex life of the dung beetle, right? Or who's the real famous Swedish director who makes all his movies about death? I mean, that would be the only that. Oh, we're gonna have entertainment, and there'd be a guy and a cow with a big sickle and talk about death in Swedish, and so. And people who wanted to watch TV and they'd have to pay an arm and a leg for it because the taxes were, because they had to pay for the big safety net they gave everyone. And people got paid pretty good at their jobs so they could afford the taxes, but they didn't want people to drink, and they didn't, because that's all the Swedes love to do. And they didn't want them to smoke cigarettes. So a pack of cigarettes in 1977 cost me I didn't ever buy it, but how much a pack of those Luckies? $8. Or 800 kroner or whatever it was, right? So, sorry, let's talk about moron thing. Let's see, it's a lot. Free cheese, right? Anyway, well, ICE worked 24-hour shift with the weakest. Yep. So excuse my brain cells. Of course, baby. Lana's one of those people, she never has to say sorry to me. I love her so much. Because she reminds me of my partner, and when I was a police officer in New York Housing Authority, who is the first woman to, not only graduate the U.S. Army Ranger Brigade, and the Rangers make the Green Beret look like pussies. And she was so badass that the basically Army put her in charge of training. So she was my partner. Let's see, not ICE. I have goddamn auto shit. Okay. Whatever. Lana speaks in code, and you just have to, learn Lana code and 70 Swedish coins. Yes. So, and those coins are worth way more than any American money. American money is like toilet paper compared to Swedish coins. So things are very expensive. So I didn't drink, but what I would do, I would get all the shit that was expensive. Like when I went to Istanbul, I brought back a ton of cigarettes in my duffel bag, right? Threw it in the bottom of the airplane, got off, anything to declare. Because I had to, they thought I was a Swedish person. They didn't look at me. I mean, even though I was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, cowboy hat, cowboy boots, and shorts, I never got searched going through the customs. And I would bring back, what do they call that stuff? Paraphernalia? No. Let's see. Contraband. That's the stuff. So one time I brought back rabbit ears. In Italy, I was at this market, and this guy was selling these rabbit ears for TV for $1 a piece. So I bought 100 of them, right? And I sold them because the tax on TV there was, like I said, about $600 a year. So, like instead of selling drugs, I sold TV rabbit ears and made thousands of dollars on $100 investment, right? And nobody, I went through this lumpy bag, just picked it up at the carousel and walked out, and took a bus and went to a friend's house and sold half of them right off the bat to him because he was a black market guy. And he said, "Wow, this is amazing." And I said, "Good." So, so he was always the guy who taught me how to sell things on the down low. So, and once I started doing this, he would start, meeting me outside the airport. Once I got through customs, we had a place where he would just stand by. His brother had a taxi, so he could be in the taxi stand. So, that's me. I'm a businessman, but I don't want to do it. I want to do it as little as possible, right? And so real businessmen realize my potential and what I do, and and I'm a consultant, right? I don't want to be an employee, and so that's one of my client base. And then the other guys who are on the down low, they always know I know the skinny on what's going on. And so that's how I can be a millionaire living on $400 a month. And today, I don't do any of that stuff. I don't, the last 3 years since I left here, all I did is read all my ancient books that I kept. I got rid of. I had a buddy who sold rare books, and I had about 1,500 books that I dragged around for years. And I said, okay, I picked out about 200 that were my favorites, not the most rarest, not the most expensive. And he went through them all and said, "You really want?" I said, "You sell it. Give we split those. The others, you give me a third of what you sell it, right? And but you got to take them all. I'm just taking the ones I want. You got to take everything else." So he did. So he got rid of my library, and he got rid of a lot of other stuff. I mean, I left a lot of stuff here. It's like rotting down on a building off the side of the hill over here. It's going to be there, and like 1,000 years later, they'll dig it up and think that I was an Egyptian king. So let's see. Lane is shoot, yes, it's called Licenses. Came from the 50s. Only a few had TV black and white. Then so they had to pay, and the law just stayed until the 20s, until 2020s, 2000s. We finally got in the taxes, and they finally basically got cable and, got into the 21st century, right? So, but when I was there, it was like being in 1950. It was really, but George Jetson, because all of the hospitals and the schools and universities were super modern. And they had super modern, great. They were one of the, because they didn't get bombed out of existence. They had pretty good mass transit still, right? Yeah, they were leaned on during World War II, but they weren't destroyed. And so, after World War II, the Swedes are really good business people. Their industry, their banking, it supports the people and not just a few. And I don't know what it's. I mean, when I was there in 1977, it was really a nice balance between a socialized kind of country and a very capitalist country, and a country that had pride not in its army, but they had a pretty good one. You wouldn't want to fight the Swedes, and they had a compact with the Norwegians and the Finns. Like the Russians tried to invade Finland, and they couldn't put them down. And the Germans basically said, "We're not touching those guys. They're crazy," right? And so the Swedes, the Finns, I don't know if they still have their compact, but they had this compact. And Sweden has a pretty deep military-industrial complex. They have a very strong aviation industry, and they make some of the best fighters, air interceptors and ground support and air bombers. Not big, gigantic ones, but you don't want to mess with these people, right? So they make really good tanks too, and they have lots of ground support missiles. So if anyone tried to invade them, they would give them a really, unless they nuke the place, and then why invade them? You won't have it. And I, like when I was there, and I'm Mr. Military, and especially Mr. Airplane and Mr. Military Technology. And I was there long enough to meet people who were in that industry. "Oh, you like this shit? Oh, come and see the factory." I mean, I went there near Stockholm. There is a Saab makes really great jet fighters, and there's two other. And so they have a very robust military industrial complex, and it's connected with Norway and Finland. So, and Denmark too. So they're like a compact. Yes, I don't know if Sweden is part of NATO, but so you guys in Europe, what do you think about having World War III in a few weeks? Anybody seen the movie Wag the Dog? It's kind of like what's going on. So, let's see. Senator Queen about pack of cigarettes, and it's about autocrats, and 20. Everybody got a TV, but you still have to pay for 3 channels. But if you have a satellite dish, I don't think, do they tax the satellite dish? Do they tax the internet? And so anyway, the next red flag is going to be, the war. I mean, Russia is not doing anything except putting the military on their border. They're not attacking anybody. They're not entering anybody. They're not. And Obama is the guy who swirled this up because NATO did not want the Ukraine involved. They didn't want NATO. And we made a deal with the Russians that we wouldn't, when Russia fell apart and we said, get rid of half your nukes and, you're just Russia and not this big empire anymore. And we won't put NATO or the EU into any of your satellite countries. Well, we did. Poland, Lithuania, all of those other Balkan states. And, but Ukraine is right on the friggin' border, and half the country is Russian people, Russian-speaking folk. And the deal Russia gave to Ukraine was, hey, listen, the other half of the Ukraine that wants to be in the EU, they can trade all they want, and the guys in Russia, they're still part of Ukraine, and your political system is this Ukrainian system. We're not going to get involved in that. But what we will do is we will sell you free natural gas. We will give you free natural gas for your industry, and all that money you were going to borrow from the World Bank, we will give it to you. I mean, what a deal. And Mr. Obama and others forced Ukraine by what they did. So there was a duly elected president that was, that's a great deal. Sure, I'm going to sign on for that. And they didn't assassinate him, but they fermented a putsch and put their own mobster in their place, in his place. And that's when this conflict started. And the people were irate about it, right? They didn't want this guy. And, we manipulated the whole thing. And that's what, happened. And then we did other shit right up there where Russia, there's this little part of Yugoslavia that was and always was part of Russia. And they had their navy there. And we were about to take that away with this mobster guy. And that's when Russia just went in there, Crimea and the other place. And that's the story. And you don't hear that on U.S. Media. Maybe Jimmy Dore. You might hear it on Jimmy Dore. But other than that, you're not hearing it. Well, we are ready. Don't test Swedish patience. Right. Like I said, you don't want to mess. So, Alana, is there still the Confederacy, the military alliance between Finland and Norway and Sweden and Denmark? Do they still have that? Anyway. Oh, there he is. So the new show starts. There he is. So did you get a hold of, so all the stuff I sent you, what did you find most interesting?
Well, the guy with the red hair and the big round eyes, I just don't trust people with big round eyes.
Okay, we won't even go there. How about, remember our last conversation and you were telling me how peace-loving Biden was and everything's going to work out with Russia? What do you think now? And I said, just give it a couple of weeks. So here it is, about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks since we had that conversation.
My theory hasn't changed.
You really think what he's doing is peaceful?
No. I don't. What I'm saying is he's trying to satisfy those guys without causing a problem.
Well, World War III is a problem. World War III is a problem.
Well, it's not going there. He's not going to okay that. Neither is Putin. They know. As a matter of fact, let me see what I can see.
Well, Blinken looked like the stupidest human compared. Blinken's this big, tall guy, and the Russian guy is like a foot shorter. And what the Russian guy said and what Blinken said was, the Russian put it all into context, and he said, we gave America, the EU, and NATO what we want out of this deal. And we put it in writing diplomatically about half a year ago. And you still have not said what you want to do.
My point on this is...
And Blinken said, I don't know, Did you see that video? So your point. Yeah, tell me your point. I'll shut up.
Well, I was.
Yeah.
It's like Obama couldn't do what he wanted to do. The president is not really president. Is not really in charge. And these guys are trying to corner Biden. And so here McConnell is saying yesterday that Biden is weak on Russia. He's not up to the challenge. So he's being coerced into the confrontation, but he's actually he's trying to find a way to diffuse the situation.
So how come his Secretary of State he said nothing, not even close to what you're saying? He just said humana.
Well, the deal, what's happening there is that what we're getting reported from what he says is a skewed position to corner Biden into going where the deep state wants him to go. That there's actually other readings of what's happening that are not being reported that show a different picture.
So what are those? And who are giving those readings? What sources do they come from?
Well, they are keeping sources. Now, what's your question?
You said that there are elements that are saying there's a different story under the table. And I said, okay, what's that under the table? And what are the sources that bring this information to you?
There are things on YouTube, RT, and this guy, Alexander Makaros, are analyzing a little differently, quite differently than what we're hearing on the media. Readouts, the people who are studying the readouts.
What readouts?
The readouts that whenever you have when Secretary of State met with Lavrov,
right?
They do a readout.
And what is that?
They publish what was done, what was said.
Right.
And so what we get is we get a skewed idea of that that's designed to pump up the conflict, where in fact they're not being and since I talked to you, by the way, this guy Alexander Makaros, he agrees with the point that I'm making. He agrees with the point that Biden is trying to do a dance between not having to wound himself politically because of the way the American system is working and the way the media is working, and trying to portray him as soft on communism, that he's actually working towards trying to work out a diplomatic arrangement.
But first off, there is no communism in Russia.
I don't know where that comes from. Where's that coming from?
Well, in the 1990s, when Russia collapsed, Russia became Russia and not the USSR, and they became basically a capitalist state, meaning the state doesn't run anything. The oligarchs do.
He's not following what I said, I don't think. How's that following what I said?
Anyway, so why did Blinken be such a moron? Did you watch that news conference where the Russian guy and Blinken were right next to each other, and the Russian guy put it out in amazing detail and clarity, and Blinken said, humana.
Right. Well, you can see it all over Blinken's face.
Right.
He's been knocked sideways, and have his bearings because he's full of shit and he doesn't know how to handle it, and the facts are discombobulating him.
So
But
why
Blinken,
did
just look at Blinken and you can see how nervous he is.
no shit? That's what I'm saying. Humana. But so if Biden is such a amazing president, why did he pick that moron to be our Secretary of State?
Well, that's a good question. Why does he have the Victoria Nuland in there? The reason they hire those guys is the same reason that every single negotiator on the Israel-Palestine thing has been a Jew that is satisfactory to the Likud. You put your people in. It's like Lincoln's thing. You keep your enemies close. That's the answer to that question. He gives them. They have so much power over him that he has to satisfy them. He can't be in contradiction. That's what happened to Trump. Trump was in contradiction to the established order, and they took him down. So the game that you have to play is you have to give them you try to wrestle back from them as much as you can, but you can't wrestle much.
Right. So the big picture that you're displaying here is that both Trump and Biden are valid, their own man kind of presidents fighting against the deep state, and they aren't puppets.
A little differently. The deep state has so much power over them that they have to dance around and struggle to do it their way, or else they're taken down.
Well, I think what's his name, Donald Trump. He even if he was put there by the deep state, he surprised them by he kind of did everything that he was sent there to do, destroy the United States structure, so a new one could come in. It's like in business. If you want to rejigger your business, you have to destroy or distract or disrupt that business process that's been there the last 50 years. And yeah, it used to work really great. Now it's just barely staying alive. And you can't just change little bits of it. You got to take it out with a sledgehammer. And that's what Donald Trump did, but elements of the deep state wanted him to do that because they wanted to replace it with, Mr. Globaloney. And so that's what
I'm not agreeing with that.
Right.
I'm not agreeing with this analysis you're laying out right.
So you don't think that there are elements in the deep state that was happy with what Donnie Trump did?
No. I think the deep state saw him as a threat. It's like Trump wanted to negotiate with Russia, same as Biden. Same as Obama wanted to negotiate and do diplomacy with Russia.
Then why did Obama force Ukraine? Ukraine had this thing going on where half of the Ukraine that faces Russia, all those people speak Russian, think of themselves as Russian. When that's Russia was in there, so that's them. And their economy and everything is facing towards Russia. The other half faced Europe, and they wanted to be, in the EU. And Putin said, fine, that can be. Your country can stay one Ukraine. This half we deal with, that half you guys deal with. And by the way, we will give you free natural gas for your industry so you'll have a leg up so you can build your industry. And the money you wanted to borrow from the World Bank, we will lend it to you with no interest. And the president who was president of the Ukraine at that time said, yeah, that's a great deal. And then Obama with the CIA, basically had a pooch and got rid of him and put in this, guy who was basically a mobster. And that's when he forced this other thing. And then Obama had this, with Hillary Clinton, a thing of forcing all of the Ukraine to become part of NATO. And most of NATO said, and that was in 2015 when that conference occurred.
Do you recall Obama at the microphone saying to the Russian, wait
Was he talking about his second election?
Yes.
Right.
He was saying, don't take me serious on what I'm saying now.
10, 11.
I can't. I'm under constraints. I'm in a straitjacket. Wait till after the election.
Yeah, but
Recall that.
well, I didn't hear that speech, but I read about it in the
It
Times.
wasn't a speech. It was just he said, wait
Right.
till after the election.
Right.
That was all
But
he
see, the
said.
thing is, the thing that he pressured,
Did you remember that?
I remembered it, and he lied through his teeth. Because
What are you
in-
talking about?
in 2015 is when they had the putsch in Yugoslavia, and Ben did this conference where Hillary Clinton forced NATO and the EU to want to bring Ukraine into NATO. And France and Germany said, fuck that, no way, Jose. And England was also not for it either. But that was totally on Obama's nickel because it was after the election. 2015 was after the election.
That I want you to respond to before we move on.
Yes,
What I said was
yes,
that Obama basically said to the Russian guy,
right,
I'm not my own man now. I'm being coerced. Wait till after the election when I'm more free, when I'm open to be more free to deal in a more greater integrity.
So my question is,
Do you remember that?
well, first of all, you have to tell me what date was that?
No, I don't remember the date.
You don't? Do you remember the year? Do you remember the year? What year was the? What was the second? Oh, for me to be able to answer that question, you have to tell me what year was that. When was his second election? That was 2012, correct?
Why is a specific time that big a deal on this?
Well, because the institution where they had a putsch in the Ukraine was in 2015 was the
the coup in Ukraine was 2014.
okay. So, but the conference of that was in 2015. A year after the election.
The conference,
Meaning that when they forced Europe to want to force the EU and the NATO into all of the Ukraine. That was a year after he won his second election. So if he had the latitude to be more, what was the word you just used? No. You said that he would be more respectful. No more. Well, but you used to.
all he said was one simple sentence: after the election.
So and my sentence is after the election, he showed his true essence by forcing the hand on what's going on right now. A year after the election, when he was in his second term, he showed that he was lying through his teeth, that he was a warmongering scumbag.
No.
He was a good time Charlie for the white man.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's my point. Is that he was coerced, controlled, and he was saying, I'm not my own man now.
But he wasn't his own man in his second term. That's my point.
Right. No, that's true. That's true. I'm not saying he became his own man. What I'm saying was he exposed the pressure that was on him, that he was not free to do it the way he wanted to do it.
Which means he was just a puppet for all those 8 years.
Well, he was controlled.
Puppet.
Well, no, he was controlled. He was maneuvered. Puppet's the wrong word.
Okay. So why didn't you like the guy with the red eyes? He was from RT. I got that off of RT.
No, he wasn't on RT. He wasn't on RT.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we must be talking about a different guy here.
Was he bald? Anyway, I'd have to go back and look at what I sent you. How about
long red hair with
Oh, that guy. Yes. Okay. Yes. Because I'm thinking of the guy that was on Red Tier and he was bald and had big bulging eyes. But how about the tall, thin guy who was more the theologian? What do you think of that?
Which one was that? Are you talking about?
Well, I sent you some political stuff, and then there was a guy who's very much a theological scholar.
Is that the Jordan guy?
Yeah. I think so. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought he was a pretty sharp guy.
Yeah. I thought you'd like that. So my sense of everything is this is the last gasp of the globalists, and they want this war in the worst of ways because they need everything is going down the tubes. People are realizing they've been had. Europe is up in arms. I have some friends right here with me who are in Europe, and they would give you their opinion gladly.
Yeah, the United States is losing respect across the board.
Oh, if they ever had it. I remember being in.
No, they had discipline, and they still to some degree have discipline, but they don't have respect.
Well, I was in Sweden in '77, and they sure didn't like America. They had no respect for America. I was in France in '60.
They're voting with America and have been.
Only because they're being kind of forced, and I think what's going to happen is NATO. I mean, NATO is irrelevant, and it's going to fall apart. This whole thing with the Ukraine is going to force the NATO to just disintegrate, and it's going to hurt America because of NATO. It forced all those European countries to buy aircraft from Lockheed and radars and missiles from Raytheon, and all of that money is going to go away. That's why they want this war, And so, and that's why they left all the weapons. That's why Biden pulled out of Afghanistan the way he did, because, now the Taliban is truly armed to the teeth because we left those weapons for them, and they can do some other bad things. And then we'll have another war there,
Called creating chaos.
The creative chaos, yeah. Did you ever see any of David Icke's books or lectures? Do you know who that guy is, David Icke?
I remember the name. I'm just trying to put it in my mind straight. What was his main thing?
Well, David Icke is a guy who was a nice Southie London boy who played soccer well. He was on Manchester or one of those teams. He hurt himself and became a TV presenter. And back in '89, he went to the World Cup in Brazil, and he stayed a few weekends, weeks after that to have a vacation. He ended up out in the rainforest. He met a medicine man who blew Waziako right up his nose, and he was like revivified. He saw everything behind the curtain. And he came back from that in '90 and started talking about how, everything we know is a lie, and that, we're being run by a reptilian race from space, and the Queen of England and a whole bloodline of presidents and political and banking leadership is, reptiles, right? And people go, this guy is, he was well known on TV. So he went back to his job as a sports presenter, and he would, give the things and then start talking about reptiles, and the Queen's a reptile. And people were like, come on, this guy's a nutter. So he went off, and for a year he did homework, and he wrote a book that sold like 20 million, like in the first year, because it gave people an insight to things that they felt about but couldn't put their finger on. And that is his greatest skill, because that little, LSD trip that he took in the woods never left him, right? A lot of people see things when they... Have you ever done hallucinogens? Ever?
I haven't had that experience with it.
Right. Okay. So, a lot of people have that experience. And that's why people like, the party drug, ecstasy, because it's like the love drug. You feel you just love everyone. You feel everyone's soul. Anyway, David never lost that insight. I mean, a lot of people, they get high, they see shit, and then they come back down and they go back to work. Not David. He stayed at it. So he has been on this trail since 90. So it's 90
Send
to
me an email by.
the one you sent me a David Icke link when he was talking about people working together and being, the whole thing. He's got kind of whitish blonde hair, old guy. You sent me that link, David Icke.
Shit, man.
Yeah, it's too late for you. But you're a midnight owl. You're supposed to be able to be. This is when you're the sharpest.
Well, I got up early this morning. I got up at 7.
Boy, yeah, baby, that's too early for me. It's too friggin' cold. Do you have the ice? I've been iced up here at the school since 2 weeks ago Sunday when that storm came in.
What you have to do, by the way,
Yeah,
is that when it gets up into the upper 40s like it did the day before yesterday,
right.
you drive the road.
Well, that's a
little
little. No, see, that is a problem because what has happened up here is that my driveway is 2 miles long,
Right.
and it is a riverbed, not a road, and so it snowed. We got 10 inches up here, and then it went straight to 8 degrees for 3 days, and then the next days it got sunny, but it still went below. It wasn't above freezing. We haven't gotten above freezing until a couple of days ago, but we still have 6 inches, and it's not snow. It's ice from the top to the ground.
I do understand exactly what you're saying. The difference is what I'm saying is that when you got that much snow on the ground, you can't do anything with it when it's frozen. You have a choice of either plowing it or packing it.
Well, and we can't do either because, so what I did, when that snowstorm on Sunday, I went out there early, and I brushed my car off, and I made sure I could open the doors, and I made a 4-foot circle all around it, and I cleaned up the steps so I wouldn't kill myself.
With a shovel, you mean?
Well, with a rake. Rake works better for me anyway. And so I did that, and then as I was doing that, that snow turned to sleet. And what I cleared off, luckily I cleared off, and the sleet turned to ice almost immediately, even on the place I cleared it off. But I had a 80-pound bag of salt. So I left it, and then luckily it turned to rain, which up here was great because it knocked the ice off the trees so the trees didn't fall on the power lines. So that happened, and it was a little windy. It was perfect. So it knocked everything off the trees, so we didn't have to worry about losing that. But between the wind, the sleet, and then the rain, it turned the top quarter inch of that snow into ice, right? So the next day, I tried to do what you said, So I backed up into a place that was flat. So if I went forward, the inclined plane going down that quarter mile to the Big Bend is 40 degrees downhill. So I went backwards, and the car went up on the top of the ice and didn't crunch it down. It just stayed there. And because I had 4-wheel drive, the back, I just put it on the 2 back wheels and hit the gas, and they just spun. They didn't dig in. The car, my big, heavy 4-wheel drive SUV did not crunch it down whatsoever. So I moved it back onto the dry platform and went inside. And that's when we had like 4 days up here of it didn't get above 20 degrees. So now it is, so there are 5 other houses on this hill. And I didn't have to get down, but they all had jobs and businesses and shit. 3 people wrecked their car. And the other 2 people
Jammed up the road probably in the process.
right. And no, not even, they just, there was no going into the road. It was just a sheet of ice, and they hit that place where it was like 50 degrees. And I don't know if you've ever been at my driveway. There's a thing called the Bricks Road, big tight turn, and there's a mountain on one side and a cliff on the other. And the road is only like 12 feet wide. And that's where those people lost their car. You know, they didn't hit the gas, didn't hit brakes, and the thing just kind of slid right off. You know, and you know, they had 4-wheel drives. One guy had chains and he slid off. And the other 2 people were lucky. They didn't go off the cliff and end up, you know, 100 yards down into the woods and wrecked their car, but they smashed their way down on the inside of the mountain, got down onto the dry ground, and their car worked, and they wrecked one side of their car, but they at least had their car that they could go to work. And then they had to leave the cars down on the blacktop, and they had to walk up the ice. And one guy broke his leg trying to walk up. So
This is probably the worst storm that I remember.
me too. I've been here 20 years. I've never seen this. You know, we'd have big storm. We'd have 10, 15 inches, but 2 days later it'd be 50 or it'd rain and it would go away. I've never seen this. And so what I'm thinking, forget global warming. We're heading for an ice age.
Well, I think what it is the stirring of the jet stream, and therefore you get higher and lowers,
Right.
and more radical.
More radical. Yep. So anyway, whatever it is, I didn't have to go down. I don't really have to go down till the 8th of February, right? And even that, if the road isn't good, I can call these people up and say, can we reschedule for another, next week, right? Because I think next it's supposed to be in the 50s next week, and it might even rain. If it does that, this will go away. But if that rain turns to snow, or if we get any big snow,
50 degrees, it'll be
Yeah.
And the point that I was making earlier was that when it is melted, or when it's not crunchy, when it can be crushed down, that's when you go out and drive the road.
but I did not have a chance to do that ever.
Okay, well, I'm not saying you did.
Right.
That's not the point. I'm only saying that's the strategy.
Yeah, I did it every year. I know the strategy. I used to do that. Right. Yeah, man, I would do that. And when it was like it was for 20 years, because once you did that, once you made your tire path in the snow, then it would melt even faster. It would give a place for the water to drain down.
Right.
But if you
Yeah,
But if you can't pack it down like that, it's just a sheet of ice for 6 inches.
you stay off it.
Yes, and that's what I've done for the last 11 days. I don't have to go anywhere.
Well, there was only one window for me to pack it, and I did it
Right.
during my window.
Right.
And had I not packed it, I wouldn't have been able to get out today.
Right. So anyway, that's like I said, I've been here 20 years. You've been here longer. I've never seen it like this. Yep. So, and you know what was interesting? So there was no hope of me getting out of here. And like I said, I don't have to go anywhere until the
You
8th.
wouldn't get back.
Definitely not that, because the other guy who did get down and he had chains, he tried to get back. He couldn't even go 10 feet because the steepest part of that 2-mile road is the first 200 yards off the blacktop. And you got to hit it going, meaning you have to make that tight turn and zoom up there. And he didn't get more than 50 feet. And he rolled back, he let himself go back to the black. And he's the guy who broke his leg. So he tried to, and the other 2 guys, they found him. And luckily they found him. And they crawled up a mile to get, they couldn't step. They had to crawl. And one guy, he had tools. So they each had big screwdrivers in their hands. And they were dragging the guy with a broken leg. And when they first started, they realized this is not a good idea. If they get him up to his house, how is anyone going to get him to fix his leg? So they kind of pushed him back, put him in one of the cars. And, he called on the cell phone, and the ambulance came and got him. But the other 2 guys crawled up there because their kids and wife was up there. And so it's been a total mess. And so everyone on the hill has like, you can't, no one believes. I mean, like I said,
You're on the north, you got north face.
that's right. We don't even get the sun like you do. Right. So yeah, it's not good. But I didn't have to go anywhere. But what was interesting was that, so I couldn't do all the stuff I was planning to do in this last 2 weeks. So I basically just sat home, meditated, prayed, wrote, read, and did YouTubes. And it was a very interesting, cathartic experience to have to let go of all the plans you had. You know what I mean? Because there's no way I could do anything, you know? And John, who doesn't even go down anyway, said, let's go down. We'll just get in your car. It's a heavy car. And I said, no, John. And that's when I backed up to show him that, the back wheels just spun, like. And then he said, no, when we go down, it'll push it down. I said, no, that's when the other people who landed up in the woods, don't want to do that. So he walked out there to show me that he could jump on it and it would go down. And he did like a triple somersault, it's like,
True idiot, huh?
no, he's not. He's what is known as a savant. He's not an idiot.
Well, he sure found out he was wrong, didn't he?
No, he then said, we can still do it. I said, no, John, I said, oh, and you have to bring it to money. I said, John, you want to ride him down? Not a problem. You have to give me $20,000. You give me $20,000. We'll get in the car right now and go. But this car ride will cost you $20,000. And even if I get down by some miracle, because he's all about praise Jesus, I said, you just keep saying praise Jesus, and angels will pick us up and take us down, and it'll all be good. You still have to give me $20,000. So that's what kind of stopped him. So, and then
So you're still stuck.
yeah, pretty much. And I'll be stuck tomorrow. I mean, it's
more snow coming.
how much? How many?
3 to 4.
Oh, praise Jesus! Not bad. No.
Yeah, start tomorrow in the afternoon.
Right, and then going into the night. But I was hoping that it would just be a dusting, 3 or 4 inches. That might stick me up here till May. It's
If
like,
it doesn't warm up, it will.
yes, exactly. It's like, I mean,
And my point earlier was, if it does warm up, that's when you have to
yes, definitely. When it warms up and my tires can go in, not a problem. I'm out of here.
You got to pack it down and
Right.
drive it in 3 or 4 times.
And still, I may, even that occurs, unless it really melts away or really melts, like turns muddy, I wouldn't get back up.
Yeah, you pack it, and then when you follow heat after that, then it'll get it down to dirt.
Right. But if it doesn't stay 50 for a couple of days, it won't work. Like you said, I'm on the north side. That road doesn't get sun. So anyway, so that's my situation. And it's like, this is like training days for patience and letting go, So that's where it's at. Well, I'll send you the comedian thing and see if you get that, because it is hilarious. It really, it like made my heart feel good to laugh and laugh and laugh.
Okay, I missed that, and I'll send you the connection to the Alexander McCrackles. I can't say his name,
Right.
And you'll see the picture here of Biden, and that tells a story. But this is the guy who studies it more than anybody else. He's the one that does the readouts from both sides every time, every day.
Yep.
He'll be worth checking out. I think he's the most savvy guy on the whole Ukraine thing.
Well, then send me that. I'd be interested in looking at it.
I just hit send. All right, later.
Okay, and watch more of that other guy, the tall guy, the theologian guy. His channel is really good. You'd like that.
You're talking about Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a sharp guy.
Yep. So,
All right.
okay,
Later.
catch you later. Okay, so what'd you think? So, Lana, are you still there? Can I call you? Lana See, there is a smart of that person. Use that. Yep. Yeah, right. I mean, that's what I do with people. But when they just keep trying to force this narrative that's like, really, really, that's what, really, so, and, there's the cheeky monkey in me who just, like the video I started off with, this is one of those ones you should, after we go up, watch the first thing I put up with the Mishka, the guy who's like, really, and he's upset that he can't find his Scotch tape and his paper clips, after 18 years of taking care of his mom when he wasn't here, about 20 different things I did to save his butt. He's not thinking of that. It's the Scotch tape and the paper clips. Right? And I'm calm and cool, and he's just losing his mind, because I keep saying, because pretty much everything he's saying is subjective, right? And I left his place cleaner than I found it, well organized. And it's just that the shit wasn't in the pile that he left it in. It was on the other side of the room in a nice box with a marking on it, And it took him 2 weeks to find that, And I fixed his, he didn't have a shitter in that place. And I put, I dug the hole and put the septic line in for him, right? And the guy he got won $20,000 to do it because he was going to bring heavy machinery and destroy his lawn and all the beautiful bushes his mother put up. And, I did it with a couple of Mexican guys, So, and that's, that is the problem of the human species, that they have a belief structure and they believe in that. And I don't believe in anything. All I have is a firm connection to love's co-creation. That's it. That's and I don't believe in the words of it. I believe in the actions of it. I'm an action-oriented kind of guy. Oh, let's see. That's why you don't talk about 3 things: religion, politics, and sex. Only if you can. And if you can talk, do it. Do the dance. Exactly. So, Lana, I'm gonna end this little show. We've been at it for 3 hours and 26 minutes. I think that's long enough. So remember, guys, more thumbs up. Come on, more thumbs up, and get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, and put some stuff up there in my PayPal and make some comments. Jamie Hilliard made some great, and go look at my past shows. I mean, I looked at all, 1,800 of them, looking for that thing that I put at the beginning of the show, because Jamie found it and was like, this is freaking amazing. And I had to go look at all the other stuff to find it. And so, because if you like these shows, my earlier ones, I think, are my better ones, right? So, because I was naive and innocent in those days. So, always, Bubba, just when I have to take care of about when energy just goes off, I have to rest and get my feet up again. But so put your feet up, and I'll call you in about 10 minutes. You should have a little juice in your phone, just so I can say hi to your ear. I mean, you're hearing me say hi to your ear, but so I can see your face. I love the little dot that I push in my face. Not only do I send you a voicemail, it gets my face, right? You get my face? Yes. Okay, sweets. All of you, see you tomorrow morning-ish, sometime between, I'm not an early morning boy. Sometime between 11 a.m. here and 2, I'll do a show, and then I'll again do one around 8. Okay? Okay. Love you guys. Where's this little thing here? There it is. There we go.